All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining my live for today, May 10th or May 9th in America. Thank you very much, everyone, for coming by. It's good to see you all. I did end up doing a makeup video answering the rest of the questions. There were about 9 super chats that I didn't get to last Wednesday. And so I went through them later on and answered those and made a video. And I'll be putting that together and that will be released. So for those who didn't get their super chats answered last time, they have been answered and they will come out in the next several days or something like that whenever I get it edited and put together. So just keep an eye out for that, and hopefully you guys see the answers. Okay, so I'm going to start with a question here. This was a super chat that isn't coming up here on StreamYard, but it's from Beth Rademacher. Good to see you, Beth, and thank you for the super chat. Beth asks, what beef cuts are fatty enough on their own besides ribeye? I'm getting tired of adding fat trimmings on the side. Well, things like brisket, the 4/4 sort of chopped, like the chuck steaks, things in the front towards the animal, that generally ends up being a fattier part of the animal. You can also get things that have like a thick fatty cap, like you can get like a rump steak that has a thick fat cap. It just depends on how the butcher cuts it. So talk to your butcher, just ask them to leave big ridges of fat on things. And then that usually helps a lot. And then so instead of, trimming things off and putting in a bag of trimmings for you to have, fat's just still on the meat. And it doesn't have to trim it off and then get the trimmings and then cook the trimmings. It just comes with the steak. But chuck is really good for that. And brisket is amazing for that. So I know people that even just eat brisket like steak. They'll just cut brisket up into steak. It's cheap as hell. And it's very fatty and tastes good. It's, some, this is just cat freaking out. Sometimes people think of it as a bit more tough, but if you're, cutting it against grain and cooking it up, I haven't tried it myself, but from what I've been told by people who have, that's actually fine. It's not like, like a tenderloin or something like that, but not many cuts are. So things with a bigger fat cap, tell the butcher not to cut it off. Brisket, chuck, those sorts of things, and ground beef. You can get your butcher to make very fatty ground beef. It's pretty good. Lamb chops are really very fatty too. The 4/4 chops, again, that would be like the version of the sort of the chuck steaks in cow. I think would be similar equivalent to the shoulder chops, things like that in lambs would be very fatty too, and they taste good too, and they're cheaper. So those would be some good cuts you can try. And so there's questions here. How to determine? Oh yeah, and how to determine if it has enough fat if there's no nutrition label? Yeah, there probably isn't going to be on whole meats, because it's going to vary between cuts. So you just eyeball it. And you see how it affects you, and you see by taste as well. Maybe you add some butter to that, and also by your bowel motion. So if you're getting dry, hard stools, then you need to up the fat. So whatever cuts you're doing aren't cutting the mustard, and you need to add something more to that. And so either getting more fat in the cut, or adding butter, bit of fat trimmings, things like that. So Alicia had a question. Is it okay not to eat fish? How would you get omega-3s? Well, there are omega-3s like DHA and EPA. Now it depends on the type of omega-3. Because people will tell you there's omega-3s in plants, and it's like, yes, but that's like saying there's water in vodka. It's not really what you want. Or liquid in vodka. Vodka is a liquid, therefore, and water's a liquid, therefore, drink vodka, because all you need is liquid. You don't need omega-3s. You need DHA and EPA, which are omega-3s, but it's different. You don't just any omega-3 won't do. You need these specific ones. So there's ALA in plants, and that's not good enough. It doesn't do anything for your brain. Maybe like a 5% conversion at most, but some studies actually show that you actually lower your DHA when you eat more ALA. So definitely not the way to go. So animal fat in general will have DHA and EPA. Generally, if they're eating what they are supposed to eat, like a cow eating grass, they're going to have more DHA, a lot more DHA to the omega-6 ratio, especially. There was something I saw from Dr. Paul Mason in one of his lectures where he discussed a study that looked at grain finishing beef, and after 3 months in a feedlot, so 90 days, they seem to have very little omega-3s, if any, after that. So keep that in mind. A lot of meat is grain finished now, and so depending on how long that's done for, it could be that you have less omega-3s. But the grass-fed and finished will definitely have DHA and EPA. You can have little tins of sardines, things like that, and other sorts of things. But grass-fed tallow, if you add that, grass-fed beef trimmings, those things will all have DHA and EPA. But yeah, it's fine not to eat fish. I hardly ever eat fish. There are some people that I just saw. Someone, a friend of mine, interviewed someone about basically how we should really be eating fish and how important that was to like grow our brain because of the DHA and EPA in there. Farmed fish won't have any because fish fish up the food chain get their DHA and EPA from the other fish that they eat. And so you take them out of the food chain and you start feeding them grain and rice pellets and soy and garbage like that. There's no DHA and EPA in there, so they're not going to get it. They don't make it. They get it from their food supply too. We don't make it either. And so you need to get it up the food chain properly. And when you dissociate your food from the food chain, it's not as nutritious as it's supposed to be for us either. So keep an eye, think about that. Don't buy farmed fish. It's a pretty nasty process anyway. It's not really good for the fish. It's not really healthy for them. It's not really nice environment, and the meat is not good for you. So it's certainly not nearly as nutritious. I mean, it's better than nothing. It's better than plants, but it's not good. And so I would avoid that and just get wild caught or just beef. Really, if you can get grass fed, do, but I don't think it's required for absolutely everyone, especially because we're talking about coming from other ways of eating, and any port in a storm, any meat's going to be better than every plant. And so just get the meat that you can afford, that you have access to, and that you enjoy, makes you feel the best. And if you can add grass-fed butter, that's gonna get you some DHA and EPA. Grass-fed tallow, same thing. So those sorts of measures will really help as well. Okay, Jonathan Davis had a question. Carnivore 1 month, down 20 pounds and loving it. Awesome. I have 5 kids and wife doesn't want birth control due to hormone issues. What are your thoughts on vasectomy messing up my hormones or any other ideas? It shouldn't mess up your hormones unless they, roughly manipulate your testicles or something like that. And maybe there's something to do with that. I don't do those surgeries, so I don't know if there's any sort of literature on that being the case. But if were, it would likely be just something temporary, unless they really messed up and damaged your testicles. But it's just cutting the vas deferens, so it's just a tube coming up from the testicles, and you just cut, take out a big chunk so it doesn't just reconnect very easily, and then tie off the ends. It's pretty straightforward. So it shouldn't mess up your hormones, though. It just makes you sterile. So that's up to you. if you guys want to do that. And, it's understandable with, the hormonal birth control. There are other things, non-hormonal IUDs, things like that, the copper coil, that can have its own problems. That can increase, menstruation, cause more bleeding, things like that. And then there's the weekly hormonal IUDs, like the Mirena and what's the other one? The Kyleena, that's even less progesterone in it, and that's supposed to work locally. But a vasectomy is pretty, it's pretty effective, and it shouldn't mess up your hormones anyway. So if that's the way you want to go, I don't think that will screw you up in that way. Tell them to give you drugs to knock you out, though. I've seen that. Some people say it's like, it's not that big of a deal, but the ones I saw when I was in medical school did not give me any interest in getting that myself anyway. Sharon Francis has a question over from Facebook. Hi, Doc. I'm full carnivore. Is it okay to eat a few berries per week, blueberries, raspberries? You can, if that's what you want to do. I don't, just on principle that they have things in them that you don't want, oxalates, tannins, these sorts of things, sugar. I don't want sugar. Not as much sugar in raspberries. There are some in blueberries, obviously, or else they wouldn't be sweet. But there are these other things as well. So, if you want to do that, and just try it out. I would stay away from it for at least a month, and then you add in just blueberries, see how you feel, but really pay attention to how it makes you feel and to your health. You have any itchy on your face, or sinus issues, or aches and pains, or anything like that. And just keep an eye on it, because sometimes people are affected in subtle ways, and sometimes unsubtle ways. So just be mindful of that. And so you add these things back in, and if you say, "Oh, okay, well, I like them, and I don't feel worse, and I feel fine," then fine. If you continue to do that and you have more and more, that's going to build up, and I think that's going to be a net negative. But if you want to, and that fills you with joy, then you go for it. They will have things in it that aren't good for you, which is why I just avoid it, because I separate out my entertainment, my pleasure reward sort of activities from eating. Like, I love steak. I've never not enjoyed a steak, but that's not why I eat it. I don't eat steak because it's enjoyable. I eat steak because it's food, and I want the nutrition, and I want the food. So blueberries, raspberries, you're going to have some of these little things. You're going to have the different anti-nutrients. They're going to block out different absorption, different things that you may not want to do, and have bits of little toxins. The more you have, the more toxins you'll get. And but see how it makes you feel, and if you like them and you enjoy them, and you don't see that it makes too much of a difference, then that's perfectly up to you. Just remember that in the wild, we wouldn't have been having berries and fruits that were this sweet. Raspberries aren't that sweet, but blueberries and things like that, and other berries, cherries, those are very sweet. And we would only have them seasonally and locally, and we'd be picking them ripe. If you pick them green, which almost every commercial fruit is picked green, then it's going to have a higher concentration of toxins. You pick it, separate it from the plant, and it's stuck there in the fruit. It can't go anywhere. It doesn't just break down and degrade. The plant has to pull out those toxins. And when the seeds aren't ready, it has more toxins in there to stop things from messing with it. So just remember that, so if you were going to have blueberries, raspberries, I'd still try to do it in a more ancestrally appropriate sort of way. Like if you had, blueberries at your house, in your garden, I'd sort of eat the ripe ones, and then, for the few weeks that they're around, and that's it. And otherwise just eat the animals that come in your yard, maybe. But that's my opinion on it. But you're free to do whatever you want. I think I feel much better when I don't touch anything else. I mean, even like pepper, or like some garlic seasoning or something like that at a restaurant. It's like, I just feel far better when I avoid all of that stuff. And So I do on principle, and I don't worry about it. I don't think about it because it's not something I want. And the thing is, when you start dipping in on things, it's like, oh, maybe I'll have a bit of this. Oh, that's okay. Maybe I'll have a bit more. Maybe I'll have. Well, maybe this other thing I'll have too. Well, maybe this other thing I'll have too. Maybe this other thing I'll have too. And it's a slippery slope. And then because you're introducing these things slowly but surely, it's sort of a buildup, and you don't necessarily see how negatively it's affecting you. And until all of a sudden you're just sort of in the middle of it and you're back eating all sorts of stuff, and then you're not feeling great. You're like, oh, how did I get here? So just be careful, because that happens too. And Sister Spellbinder said, thank you so much for all you do. It helps so much. And you're such a blessing. Well, thank you very much. That's very sweet of you to say. I appreciate that. Okay. All right. There's a super chat from S. Jack. Thank you very much for that. Hey, Doc, is it necessary to chew meat 30 plus times before swallowing, or is it just a myth? I can't imagine our ancestors doing it. P.S. Thanks for everything. I don't think you necessarily have to do it 30 times exactly. I couldn't imagine any animal counting in its head how many times it chews it. I mean, just chew an appropriate amount of time. I think we just say that just because some people sort of scarf things down a bit more quickly, and it's just more of a choking hazard. Primarily, but also, the more you chew it, the more you break it down, it should be able to get broken down by the different acids and enzymes in your digestive tract. So, no, I think you chew a sufficient amount of time to get it properly broken down, and then swallow, but whatever's comfortable for you, and so that you don't choke, and it's comfortable, I think is fine. I certainly haven't heard anything about that in medical school anyway. So I think it's just get it in people's heads to chew enough. Damian Williams, thank you for the super chat. Good evening. You told your story about dosing your brother with vitamin C with such joy. It was so funny. Do you have any other pranks or Chaffee stories to share? Thank you. Yeah, that was funny. People don't remember that. My brother, we were going skiing or snowboarding up in Washington State, and we were like getting ready to go. And we always, he's my older brother, and there's always some brotherly tension and conflict, and you just sort of mess with each other. He's like trying to assert dominance, and I'm trying to tell him it's not the right place for it. Like, go somewhere else. And so he said, "Yeah, why don't you?" And he always had this look on his face when he was going to mess with me. And so I saw it since I was a kid. So I was just like, you could see it on him. And he's like, "Yeah, why don't you go upstairs and get me some water?" And he's like, "Yeah, give me some water. Yeah, and put some vitamin C in it." And I was just like, "All right." And so I was like, "Yeah, all right, that's fine. I'll get you vitamin C." And so instantly I knew what I was going to do. And there was already some boiling water there. And so I just put boiling water in, and just like half a mug of vitamin C, and just filled it up with boiling water, and sort of make a super saturated solution. So if people take chemistry, if you heat up a solution, you can dissolve a lot more in there than would normally go in. And then if you're very careful about it, you can cool it down back down to room temperature, and or possibly even below, without it forming precipitate and crystallizing. It's actually kind of a cool reaction. But if you drop like a bit of the crystals in, it'll actually they'll all like form out, and it's sort of interesting sort of science experiment. But you can make this super saturated solution. So there you go. Stay in school, kids. You can learn how to prank people, and so I did that, and like, God knows how bad this was. And like, I just went down, and you just look at him like, all right, there you go. And he just looked at me, and he's just like, and he sort of knew it was coming, that I was going to like put more in it. And he starts drinking, and like, to his credit, he just took it, just pretending like it wasn't there. And I'm like, all right. It was like, we both knew what was going on. We didn't say anything. It was just like, he hands back. He's like, yeah, thanks. So I was like, all right, fair enough. And we're just driving up, not talking about it. And like half hour, 40 minutes in, and he's just like, how much vitamin C did you put in there? I was like, dude, like half the bottle. I was like, I can't believe you drank that. He's just like, yeah, it wasn't good. It's like, now my stomach's really, really killing me. And tries to say he had just epic diarrhea for like 2 hours after that, and like just This kid is just stuck in the bathroom, and so I can't. I can't think of. Oh, I can't think of anything right now. I'm gonna think it was that one, but no, we would just mess with each other, and I'll try to think of one if it comes up. But damn it, what are some of the other things we did to each other? Now I'm just thinking of the times we fought and tried to beat each other up. I can't think of anything at the moment, but if it comes up with something, I'll definitely share it with the class as well. But yeah, just things like that come up. You just sort of mess with people, and we did that a lot in the rugby team as well. And although a lot of that was just messing with people and just seeing if they get a rise, if you get a rise out of them, and if you did, it was like blood in the water. Everyone eyes would go, oh. It's good, but just don't do that. Just never show anybody on like in that sort of scenario with like rugby players and things like that something that they've said has pissed you off, because like that's the only thing you're going to hear for the rest of the month. But yeah, if I think of something, I'll tell you guys. Metabolic paramedic, thank you very much for the super chat. I know long COVID has been termed post-viral fatigue or something like that. Have you any experiences in success treating anyone with long COVID, or have any advice about using carnivore to treat it? Only from what I've heard from other people. I have seen a number of people that have reported back that they have had long COVID and went on carnivore, and that seemed to help eventually. I mean, these are things that don't just clear up overnight, but over the course of weeks and months, they said that it helped after that. Could that be just a normal progression and they coincidentally started carnivore? Sure. But, nothing had helped until then, and they were, feeling pretty rotten and tired at that point. And so, a lot of people have reported that. It's certainly worth a try. It's going to help you in a lot of other ways. And sometimes, when you have a condition like that and you change your diet dramatically by going on a carnivore diet, and your body and your brain just works so much better. Even when you have long COVID, just superimpose on that, you still feel a lot better, and your body works so much better. And so it's already going to be an improvement. Even if that thing, the post-viral fatigue syndrome or long COVID, has stayed the same, your body's going to work better with that affliction. And so you're going to feel better. You're definitely going to feel better overall, and hopefully it ends up getting better, and whatever the hell is going on that's causing you to feel that way goes away. And certainly people have reported that, so it's certainly worth it to try it. And if and hopefully it does help that, but it will help you in so many other ways anyway, that you'll feel better either way. I have no doubt about that. Like, you'll definitely feel better either way. So definitely worth giving it a go. Good luck with that. Akil Remy. Hello again, doctor. Lions, as other carnivore animals, usually eat their whole prey raw. They eat the bones as well, which contain calcium. So is eating only the flesh enough, assuming one eats only meat? So I don't think lions eat much of the bones. I don't think their jaws are strong enough. I do know that the hyenas can jaws are strong enough to crack the bones. And so there's one phenomenon that you see, where the lions will go after the fattier parts of the kill, and they'll tend to leave the hind legs, the hindquarters, because they're very lean. They're usually a much leaner part of the animal. And so cats do well with leaner meat. They don't need as much fat as we do, but they do need some fat. And so they go for the more fattier parts of these animals, which can run pretty lean too. But they tend to leave the hindquarters. The Native Americans tend to leave the hindquarters too. Interestingly enough, I learned that when I was a kid, and it sort of makes sense that they sort of strip the hindquarters. That was said at the time, well, they would leave this part as an offering to the spirits and this, that, and the other. And maybe they did, but it just happened to be that the part that they left was the part that didn't have nearly as much fat, and it was sort of dead weight. You don't want to. You're out in the middle of the woods hunting. You've got to pack back, 300 pounds of meat. You don't want to bring the stuff that's just not as useful. And so you just bring back the more choice parts of the animal. And so the lions tend to leave those as well. And then the hyenas come in, they'll eat that part, and then they'll crack open the bones and they'll get at the marrow, which is where the fat is. So, meat is actually fine. Organs add to all of that. You can make bone broth and all that sort of stuff, but you don't have to. I mean, there are plenty of animals that are carnivores that don't eat the bones, certainly. Some do. I mean, we're looking at it like an owl. Like, I mean, it eats mice and then it just pukes out these owl pellets that are just all the fur and bones and things like that. So I don't know how much of that of the calcium they're getting out of that either. But no, you get plenty of this stuff, and I don't think that lions eat a lot of the bones. I don't think they crunch them up, bones and all, and they get plenty of calcium from just the meat. The majority of bone growth happens after lions are weaned off of their mother's milk and onto just meat, and a baby lion certainly is not crunching bones, right? And also, where's the mother lion getting the calcium to make the milk? And so I don't think they actually do crunch up the bones. Hyenas do, and they eat it raw. Do we need to eat it raw? No, not necessarily. We've been cooking meat for at least 800,000 years, if not 1.5 million years or 2 million years plus. So whatever happens to meat when we cook it, we're well used to it. Cats can't do that. They have to have taurine and other nutrients that are cooked out, that are denatured when you cook meat. And so they don't do well on that. They have to have raw meat, but we don't. So just eating the flesh is great. Some people, because of absorption issues or from having MTHFR or something like that, may need a bit more organs. Or maybe the meat that you're eating is grain finished and it's not as healthy as it could be. And so it's not wild mammoth anymore. And so you might need a bit more of the nutrient density from something else to make up for that fact. If you're eating wild game and you're eating regeneratively raised, grass-fed and finished beef and lamb, the muscle meat is probably everything you need. When I was just eating Costco beef and I checked my nutrient levels after a few years on carnivore, I was actually in optimal levels for all of these things. And when I check people and check their blood work, I mean, it always improves. It just gets better and better and better. But especially when you're first starting out, you are going to be nutritionally deficient. You just are. And so getting some more nutrient dense things, like adding in a bit of liver, kidney, and heart, little organs or whatever, or taking dedicated supplement like you're very low on magnesium or something like that, or most people are exquisitely low on B12, to the point that the reference range is now the average for the depleted population. So if you're in that reference range for B12, you are low on B12. That's just a fact. There's a study out of Oxford in 2008 that showed that for like picomoles per liter, so that's a UK, Australia, and other countries apart from America, that's their numbers, that below like 320, which is fully within the normal range, by the way. There's a lot of things that say that it's like if it's above 130, it's normal, right? Okay, so below 320 or so, they tracked people for over 5 years, and they found that their brains shrank by over 5% on MRI, and they did annual MRIs. So no, that's not an acceptable level of B12. That's a true deficiency. You actually get demyelination of your axons, you get nerve damage, you get brain damage, you get brain shrinkage, and that's half or more of the normal reference range. So I do see people's numbers go up unless they have something like pernicious anemia or some other reason why they're not absorbing things, but it's actually more common than people think, at least partial. It may not be full on, they just don't absorb anything, but they absorb a very small amount. But either way, if you're in that level, you should probably just get a shot. I mean, you should not keep yourself in that level. You shouldn't just wait months for that to come up. And you should add in things like liver that have a lot of B12 in it early on, and then you maintain that with your diet, and you just make sure you say, okay, Am I eating just muscle meat? Is the muscle meat that I'm eating sufficiently nutrient dense so that I'm getting everything that I need? If it's not, you add in some organs. That's it. That's nature's supplement. Early on, you should include organs. You don't need much, just a small amount, and but do that, and or use supplements, because you will be deficient. You will catch up on just eating muscle meat, like you will, but it can take a while. And so if you want to speed that process up and feel better faster, add in some organs, add in a bit of supplements, but you don't have to. I mean, the meat is far more nutrient dense than anything else you've been eating, and it's not coming with all the anti-nutrients from plants and coffee and things like that will block out the absorption of all these nutrients. So you're actually getting everything out of it that you need. That makes a big difference. There's a study with oysters, and they're just looking at zinc. So some things that they ate it with blocked out the absorption of zinc, but it's going to block out the absorption of a lot of other things too. But specifically, they were looking at zinc. So oysters have a lot of zinc, and so they gave people oysters, and they checked their blood levels right afterwards, and went up significantly, right? And then they gave people oysters with like beans or whatever, and it only went up a quarter of the amount. So it's 75% reduction in absorption. So that's massive. So just something that you eat this with, all of a sudden, bang, you're missing out on 75% of the nutrition. And it's not just going to be zinc. It's going to be a lot of other things as well that you're not absorbing properly. Even medications. I had a patient that was taking her thyroid medications after she had coffee. And she was hypothyroid on medication. She just wasn't absorbing it. So I said, okay, you need to stop taking the coffee. You just take your thyroid medication before you do anything else, at least half an hour before you take anything else, drink anything else. Just let your body absorb it. And instantly, bang up into normal levels. So it makes a big difference what you take these things with. If you drink coffee and you take different vitamins and minerals, you're not going to absorb that. And it's certainly not going to absorb much of it. And so in that study with oysters, with beans, only 25% of the rise, right? So 75% was blocked out. But then they give them like tortillas, I believe corn tortillas or something like that, and it was zero rise in their zinc. So they absorbed nothing of the zinc, right? So it was very telling. What you eat this stuff with makes a difference. And when you stop eating that stuff, all of it, because the RDAs, right? It's just, you have to eat this much a day. Well, do you have to eat that much a day, or do you have to eat that much a day because you're eating with a whole bunch of other crap and you're not absorbing it, right? Or you're not utilizing it properly. And so when you don't eat it with all that stuff, what about then? You're taking a whole bunch of oxalates and other sorts of things that strip out calcium from your body. You need a lot less calcium if you're not stripping yourself out of calcium and you're actually absorbing this stuff. So if you find just eating muscle meat, if you're early on and you're nutritionally deficient, there are go for the more nutrient dense things to catch yourself up, but you may not actually need to do that. Most people don't need to do that to maintain very good levels, if not optimal levels. So good luck with that, and just eat what makes you feel good. As far as meat is concerned. Jules Anderson, thank you for the super chat. It's very kind of you. Hi, Dr. C, 58-year-old Aussie, female Aussie, long-term carnivore. Nice. No coffee for 20 days. Have Toxoplasma gondii, parasites. No gut symptoms, but very fatigued. No meds, any tips? How do they die? I eat organic meat, liver, eggs. Thank you. Jules from South Australia. Well, I'm glad to hear that you've been doing this for a while. It's great to see more and more long-term carnivores and people thriving doing this. So we have sort of toxo or other sorts of parasites, and it's not sort of shifting on its own. I mean, we do have an immune system response to parasites that is there for a reason, but at the same time, parasites have ways of dodging our immune system as well. I mean, we're designed to deal with parasites, but parasites are designed to deal with us and our immune systems too. So if you are not shifting this, I probably would look into taking medications for that. There are a lot of very effective medications that aren't really harsh on your system. They work very, very well. They're very, very safe. and can just clear this stuff out of you. It's I don't know when this sort of picked up, but you can have these parasites in your body for years or decades and not notice it, and it doesn't really, you don't really know that it's causing a problem until at one point, and then you get a diagnosis. So either way, if this isn't really clearing, I personally would go and talk to your doctor and talk to my doctor and try to get on something. Go to a parasitologist, someone who deals with this specifically, and get on a treatment regime, to get this stuff cleared out. It's generally pretty innocuous treatments, most of them, and most of them are very, very safe, and they're used sort of all over the world for decades, and they're very effective. So that's what I would do, and that can hopefully get this out, and you can get off and running and feeling great as a carnivore. So good luck with that. So question from Facebook, 4 months in, any help for estrogen? Well, it depends on the person, but I see a lot of women make a lot more estrogen. I've had several patients in their mid to late 50s who have come out of menopause and started having periods again and started making completely normal amounts of estrogen. So, just keep going with it. Just eat really fatty meat. Don't eat anything else, just water and fatty meat, salt to taste. And, just remember that your hormones come from cholesterol. So, if you don't want to avoid the cholesterol, you don't want to do things that lower your cholesterol. And, because that's what your hormones are made of. That's what your estrogen is made out of. So, just do that and support your body as much as possible. There can be other reasons why your body isn't making as much estrogen. At some point, women are just going to stop making as much estrogen from their ovaries. But just carbohydrates raise insulin. Insulin blocks the conversion of testosterone into estrogen. Women make testosterone first, and that's turned into estrogen. So you stop that, and you raise your insulin. You block that, and you mess up with your hormones. And so you're just getting rid of that should help. But at the same time, there can be other reasons why you're not making estrogen. Age. I don't think that 40s or even early 50s is the normal time that we should be going through menopause. I think it's later than that. And I've seen that. But, at some point, you're probably not going to make normal amounts of estrogen at some point. I don't know of anybody in their 90s that's still, fertile and things like that. So eventually that's going to catch up. But at the same time, it's a lot later than we think. So I would, I just hope for the best. And if your body is, give your body the best chance that it can to heal and recover. And, and if it does, it does. If it doesn't, it could be something else going on. It could be that you've just sort of passed that point that it's going to recover. But, just check it every now and then and see how you go. A lot of women, when they're still in fertility ages, they'll see a lot of disruption of their period potentially within the first 4 or 5 months, and then things sort of stabilize out. Some people don't notice any differences at all. Some people do, but just see how you go anyway, and just check, and hopefully yours does. So good luck with that. Nav, thank you for the super chat. Hi, Doc. I hear you don't salt your foods. Is that true? What are your reasons someone doesn't need to salt and someone does need to salt? Yeah, that's a good question. I think early on people may need to salt because when your insulin is high, it's drawing in more electrolytes in at the level of your kidneys. So you're storing, or you're retaining more, and your kidneys have to work harder to get out the appropriate amount of salt and other electrolytes. So when you go away from carbohydrates and your insulin levels start coming down, you don't have fasting insulin that's way too high, insulin resistance, and you're not getting these insulin spikes and all these other sorts of things, then the idea is that your kidneys may be, over spilling these electrolytes, and you may need more salt to compensate. But when you were born, you didn't have insulin resistance and you didn't have insulin spikes because fetuses are in ketosis, breastfeeding infants are in ketosis. And so it's, there is milk in there, but, then then most people in the wild, they're eating meat. That was the traditional way of doing it. Lions the same way. So your insulin levels are going to start off fairly low. You're not going to start off with insulin resistance, and eventually it's going to creep up and creep up. I mean, I had your fasting insulin should never be above 9. If above 7. Yet I see people with fasting insulin. One gentleman was 44 yesterday, and a couple months ago 72. So that's fasting, right? So all the time it's up there. He wasn't born like that, right? So that massively elevated insulin, that's affecting how many electrolytes are staying in or going out, right? But it had to work up to that. So if his insulin just went up to an inappropriate level and was just like storing all this stuff, and his kidneys didn't respond and to maintain homeostasis and eliminate electrolytes another way, he'd be dead because his electrolytes would be way too high. And when your potassium gets too high, your heart stops. That's what lethal injection is. They anesthetize people and inject them with potassium chloride, and their heart stops, right? So that is a known consequence of getting your electrolytes completely out of balance like that. And then in exercise, your potassium goes up to like sort of otherwise lethal levels, which is a bit strange. So, we don't really know what the hell's going on with that. But under normal circumstances, other than that, that's a bad idea. So his body had to get used to his insulin level going up to 72 fasting, right? So it can get used to it coming back down from 72 fasting. And so your body's going to, and actually after 6 weeks on a carnivore diet, his fasting insulin went down from 72 to 35. Massive difference. And he didn't, go the other way and die from hyponatremia and hypokalemia and things like that. So your body adjusts one way or the other. Some people in studies have suggested that they would spill out more salt than they was good for them, and they needed to add a lot more salt in. So I think that's an early thing. Maybe down the track, some people may still have some electrolyte imbalances and things like that, but you just check, and you see what's going on, and you need to add in a bit more salt or potassium or magnesium. Fine, do it. Most people are low on magnesium anyway. Sodium and potassium are very tightly regulated because they have to be. And but a lot of people are pretty low on magnesium. So I just salt to taste. Early on, I salted more. The thought is that we started adding in more salt when we started eating more agrarian crops, and we needed more mineral salts. There's a lot of long-term carnivores, the real old school ones that called themselves ZC or zero carb before the moniker of carnivore was attached to this way of eating. They didn't use salt, and they just didn't salt anything. There's plenty of sodium in meat. And there's a lady, Dana Spencer, who's like 16 plus year carnivore, and she started the Facebook group Zero Carb Health. And I like that one, and zeroing in on health. That's with Charles Washington, because they're both great. They're very experienced and knowledgeable, and they're very interactive on there. But it's also a very strict Facebook groups. They just like, look, you want to eat something else, you do that, but you don't talk about it, because that just confuses people. Like, this is what we do. It's just meat. It's just water. You're not fasting. You're not eating plants. That's it. That's what we do here. You want to do something else, go somewhere else. And I like that, because I think that helps people a lot more. And then you see real results, and you see people on different carnivore groups, and they're just doing all sorts of crap. And, oh, well, I didn't really find this benefit on these stuff. Yeah, because you weren't doing it, right? You go to those ones that are really strict. They're just meat, only water, and they have the most incredible results. And so, it does make a difference. And so that's where you go if you really want to see real results. But they don't use salt. And Dana posted just recently a post about the sodium content in meat, per ounce or whatever. There's plenty of sodium in there. And so we create homeostasis in our bodies and retain the amount that we need. So as long as you have some supply, you should be fine. my taste just ran that way. So I just salted to taste. Early on, you might need a bit more salt because of the reasons I mentioned, but eventually your body is just there. And so I just wanted less and less salt. So salting to taste became less and less salt until finally I didn't really want salt. Sometimes I put some salt on there. Sometimes there might be salt on there from a restaurant. It's a bit weird because, if someone else is cooking and they put salt on things, or we get, meat from a restaurant or something like that, there's almost always salt on it. And so it generally tastes too salty, but then I go back and something tastes not salty enough. And it's like, that's a bit weird. But I tend to not use any salt and tend to prefer it when there's no salt on things. Like if I get meat from a restaurant now, it just tastes way too salty. But still though, just salt to taste. I think that's perfectly fine. Be more mindful of it in the beginning when you're transitioning. And otherwise, just if your body doesn't want salt, you don't need salt. There are reasons and arguments on why you don't want to have salt. So just take a look at those. Stan Owsley is a guy named he's sort of nicknamed the Bear. He was like a 50+ year carnivore, white guy, and he was the sound engineer for the Grateful Dead for just years, right? And I don't know. So he did a lot of LSD and only ate meat. So I don't know. It's a bit of a unique character. It would be great if he was around. He apparently died in a car accident. Unfortunately, it was very sad. But he gave a lot of knowledge because he was doing this for a very long time. And he talked about salt and how it's like actually you don't want it. It's not necessary in a lot of different ways. And sort of thought of it as it can make you eat, overeat and eat too much, and be a bit addictive, like sugar and things like that. So there are definitely arguments out there that you can go find and look at. I just go by taste, and yeah. So I don't salt very much anymore. Anyway, I don't really add salt to anything myself. But so the salt that I would get would be from someone else salting it if someone else has prepared it, or if we're at a restaurant. That's pretty much it. But that's how my taste run. It tastes too salty if I add any salt. So that's just me. You probably might run that way too. Who knows? Just see how you go. Tina Newby, thank you for the super chat. Lost 80 pounds on mostly carnivore. Leptin is under 7. Is this why I stalled? Still at 190 for weeks. Well, first of all, that's fantastic. 80 pounds is amazing. You're saying your leptin is under 7 or over 7? Usually, a higher leptin can be a reason for slow weight loss. But it depends on the units, because I don't know where you are. So I don't know if those are the same units that I use. But in any case, elevated leptin can be a sign of a slowed metabolism, and it can be a slower start, a slower burn. If you've already been losing a lot of weight, that's probably not what's holding you back, because your leptin is just going to keep dropping and dropping the longer you're on a carnivore diet. It could be other things in it. If anything slipped back in, any dairy, artificial sweeteners, berries, other sorts of things, just dairy in general, certainly milk, because of the lactose, or even yogurt and kefir and those sorts of things. Just cut them out. Just cut all of that stuff out. Just go right down, just fatty meat and water. Add a bit of organs in there. Your body wants nutrients. It doesn't want calories. Calories come along with the nutrients. And so you can think of it that way. And so if you're eating more nutrient-dense things, you tend not to be all that hungry, as long as you're getting enough nutrients. Salt, that's another one. People argue that salt can actually make it so you overeat and you eat more than your body actually wants. So I don't know the veracity of that, but that's certainly something that's spoken about. And there are a lot of other reasons too. Like if you're exercising, which you ideally should be, you're going to put on muscle, you're going to put on bone density, and that's going to offset the fat you're losing. So don't worry as much about the weight as much as your body composition and how you feel, first and foremost. So just number one, how do you feel? Are you feeling good? Are you feeling healthy? Number two, very distant number two, body composition. Are you losing fat but gaining muscle? That's what you want. That's the ideal. And so you may look different, Your clothes may fit differently. And if you got a DEXA scan, it may show that there's a significant difference. And then basically nowhere on there is the scale, because it's not important, because what's important is your body composition and your health. And so I would just keep going with it. Remember, this is a long-term game. This isn't just a crash diet and then you go back to doing what you're doing. You're doing this for life, because this is the healthiest thing for you to do for the rest of your life. So you just do this and you let your body go the way it's going to go. Any little cheats, any little additions will screw you up. I promise you that. I see this in people all the time that struggle with their weight and they're doing really, really well and they're really just eating meat, but they're having a little bit of this. They're having some nuts or maybe a little bit of whatever. And it's not until they really just cut everything out that they actually go keep losing weight. So you really just have to cut absolutely everything out. Everything, even vegetables, especially vegetables. They're disgusting. And, I lost 23 pounds as soon as I stopped eating vegetables and started eating more meat. And that's another thing too. Are you eating enough? Are you eating enough fat? If you're chronically under eating or you're fasting or doing these sorts of things because everyone tells you you have to not eat fat if you want to lose fat, you want to not eat all that much, you want to be in a caloric deficit, just throw all that nonsense out. That has not worked ever in history. Why would it work now? Just eat what you're designed to eat. Eat fatty meat until it stops tasting good. This will encourage your metabolism. It will ramp up your metabolism, and your body will say, like, we don't need this excess fat, and we'll let it go now. So, and I've seen people do this. They've tracked their calories, they've tracked their intake, they've tracked their fat content, and they've tracked how much they were eating, and they tracked their weight. And when they started reducing their what they were eating, they could actually put on weight because their body's slowing down the metabolism. So they're saying, hey, look, we're in a famine. And so we need to actually store things. We're not going to use things. We've got to store them because, it may get to a point that we're stuck and we need this. And then they started eating more and weight started coming off, fat started coming off. So it actually does matter. Your metabolism actually does matter. It's like, oh, but the law of thermodynamics. We're an open system. We're not a closed system. We're not in a vacuum. Humans don't exist in a vacuum. And a calorie is not a calorie, because we don't burn these things first and foremost. So the entire principle is flawed. You're not burning these things. So it's not, oh, well, this energy, if this heat is idiotic, right? You can have all the energy stored up in these chemical bonds and just not absorb them and just crap them out. What did that do, right? So, oh, but the law of thermodynamics is in the toilet. All right. So, this is not applicable. That's just something that people just latch onto so they can sound intelligent. Well, but the law of you don't know what you're talking about. It's not applicable to the system, and we're not a Bunsen burner. So we're not burning things. We're not burning calories and producing energy as heat. So eat fatty meat until it stops tasting good. Don't eat anything else. And do work out, because high intensity exercises, anaerobic exercises, resistance training, sprinting will help you lose fat. It will put on muscle though. And so you will offset the scale. So be as strict as you can, eat as much as your body's telling you to eat until it stops tasting good, because that's how you know that your body doesn't want it anymore. Is when you get that bite, it just tastes like cardboard. Then you move on with your day and exercise. And then don't worry about the scale, worry about your body composition and your health first and foremost. And, some people, after years and decades of harming themselves with different ways of eating and starving themselves, they're not going to necessarily get back to the body shape that they had when they were 16. So it's just one of those things, but your body will do wonders. And so just put it in the best position possible to do just that. And you'll do fine, and you'll be very healthy as a result. So good luck with that. Noctum Knight, thank you very much for the generous super chat. I appreciate it. Hey, Dr. Chaffee, I'm starting carnivore. My trainer has me drink a mass gainer for muscle growth within 30 minutes after. What are your thoughts about how to replace that on carnivore, or do you have a certain product to use? Steak, just fatty steak. Cut up, just cook up a big fat ribeye or something like that. Put some butter on it, cut it up into chunks, take that with you to the gym. As soon as you finish, just eat it. You just get that right away. It's everything that you need. The mass gainer is a bunch of carbs and sugar and that sort of bullshit. Yeah, you'll gain mass. You'll gain mass and a fat ass, it's just carbs. It's just going to put on fat. You're not going to put on muscle. Like, you will put on muscle, but it's not going to be because of the carbs. Like, you'll put on muscle because of the work that you did and the protein that you eat. You do raise insulin. Insulin does put carbohydrates as well as protein into your cells. But you know what? You already have insulin, and protein does give a bit of a bump of insulin as well for exactly that reason. And so, the idea that it's just like, if you don't eat protein with carbs, and you're just not going to get you're not going to get enough insulin get your protein in your cells. Like, who told you that? When was that? Where was that written down? I missed that day on biochemistry class, I guess. It's complete and utter nonsense. So 70% of animal species are carnivores, and I guess they're just not getting any protein because they're not eating with carbs. That's nonsense. So you don't need carbs in order to build muscle. In fact, it's counterproductive because you're just putting on fat as opposed to muscle, and you're getting intramuscular fat. You're getting more glycogen storage and deposition and water retention as a result of that. So you look more bloated, you look more bulky, but that's fat, water, and glycogen. It's not muscle, So if you want to put on lean muscle mass, you just eat meat. You just eat fatty meat, and absolutely. So the same thing that you'd eat any other time, you eat then, right? So if you want to, in that, call it like an anabolic window straight after working out. And some people say that that's a thing. Some people say it's not a thing. I don't really care one way or the other. If you find that you like doing that and it benefits you, do it. I think of it, and I don't think it's far-fetched from an evolutionary biology point of view, because, when you maximally exerting yourself as a carnivore, when you're running the hell away from something, fighting for mating rights, or hunting and trying to physically dominate something and kill it, that's when you're working the hardest physically. And so what happens directly after that big, large exertion? You get your kill, you eat your kill, so maybe there is something to that. Either way, I don't think it's unnatural to eat directly after you work out for that exact reason. And so, if that's what you want to do, then do it, but just do it with meat. Always do it with just fatty meat. If you're in a stretch and you're in a bind and you just don't have access to that at that moment, there are protein powders that only have animal proteins, like whey protein or egg protein or beef protein, that I have one of them. I think I've used a quarter of it over the last 3-4 years, something like that. And it would be for exactly that reason. Like, I just worked out and I wanted to go, and I didn't have time to eat. I had to go, back into the hospital. I had to go, do something. And I was like, okay, I'm just gonna grab some protein and then get on with my day. And that's it. But I wouldn't do any other products with that. I would just eat meat, really. You can get those protein shakes that don't have anything else. But I would really make sure they don't have anything else. So some things that have whey protein, and that's it. That's a single ingredient. Or egg protein. That's it. Single ingredient. Beef protein isolate. That's it. Single ingredient. If it has more than one ingredient besides animal protein, don't get it. They tend to cost more, even though there's less in it. Don't know why. Probably just because there's not as much of a market for it, and so people are willing to pay more. But there aren't as many available. But in any case, you just eat meat. If you're planning ahead and you're planning on having this muscle gainer and all that sort of stuff, just bring a steak. Just bring chopped up steak. Just eat, crush it down, and you'll do great. You'll slam on muscle. You'll find it's easy, very easy to put on muscle. Actually, more easy to put on muscle now than ever before. If you're working out hard, and just making sure you're eating enough. So eat right after, sure. Make sure you're eating enough after that, maximally until it stops tasting good. And you have to do that a couple times a day to make sure you're getting enough meat, or else you'll miss it, and you won't build as much muscle as you can. You don't need to be in a caloric surplus. That's nonsense. A surplus means surplus to demand, means you're going to store it as fat. So again, you want to put on mass, fine. But you want to put on muscle, that's a different story. So you don't need a surplus, you need enough. So you eat until it stops tasting good. Your body's going to tell you. When I start working out, I double my hunger easily. And so I'm eating like, 2.5 pounds of very fatty meat a day. And then I start working out and that goes up to 4.5 easily, you know? And that's pretty normal. And when I do that and I'm eating enough, slamming on muscle. I'm at 44 and it's easier for me to put on muscle now than at any period in my entire life except 20 to 25 when I was also doing this exact same diet. And I was jacked. And when I was down in, before that, when I was in Seattle, I wasn't lifting weights as much, but I was like, my legs were like tree trunks just because of the amount of running and sprinting I was doing. And I every now and then I would go do squats and it was just like, and I was squatting, what was I squatting? 495. I do sets of 10. It was just easy, but it was like, it hurt my back so much. It was like, I didn't use weight belt. Probably should have used the weight belt. But it just put so much pressure on my back. And I was just like, I couldn't do more weight than that because it hurt my back so much. Or put so much pressure on my lower back, which I've always had problems with my lower back, for whatever reason. But for my legs, there was nothing. There's nothing. I could squat that easily. And so I'd use like sets of 10 and then I'd rest. So I'd do like 4 sets of 10 just from my sprinting workout. I didn't squat much at all. It was just every now and then I just would throw it in there. But just because of the amount that I was sprinting, it was like 6 to 8 hours a day. I was just at a dead sprint and, in interval, right? Because you break in between sort of drills and games and plays and things like that. But massive gain. Then when I was down in Arizona for a year and I was with friends that were, regularly in the gym, I started getting back into like a regular lifting cycle. And so it was just like 4 days a week, rain or hail. It's never rain or hail in Arizona, so that's easy. That we were in the gym, and I got absolutely massive. I got absolutely jacked. And now it's the same thing. If I'm working out consistently and I'm eating enough, I get absolutely very easy to put on muscle. I just put on muscle very easy, and you'll find the same thing. Eat enough meat. You don't need supplements or products. Yeah, you don't. So good luck with that, man. You'll kill it. And hello from my sister Rosalind. Hello, Rosalind. Nice to see you. There's another one here. So Rosalind said, highly valid about the part of the animal, but there's also the part where the intestines are. Humans may have been avoiding infection as well. Don't know what that's referring to. Highly valid about the part of the animal. I don't know. Maybe we're talking about organs and different sorts of things like that. But yes, I agree. Absolutely, Rosalind. 100%. And let's see. So yeah. I don't know what that's referring to though. Sorry. but good to see you. Steve Large, good to see you, buddy. Thank you for the super chat. Just wanted to say thanks. I'm seeing the course and it's paying dividends but slowly. Well, that's awesome. Well, you're very welcome. And I'm really glad that it's getting better. It does. It just keeps getting better. And those benefits do ramp up. The more strict you are, the more consistent you are, the better you are. And when you're eating fatty meat, you're eating enough of it, you do really well. And it just gets better and better as you go. Your mitochondria get more plentiful and more and more, and replaced and get more useful. And your body just gets better and better and better and more adapted. And so you'll do great. So keep it up. And your hormones get a lot better. And when your hormones improve, it's not just like, oh, my testosterone's up, my growth hormone's up. It's now, okay, for the next 6 months that they're up. Now you start seeing really good results because of how it affects your bodies. Hormones are slow acting, long acting. They take a while to really see full effects of those things. So this just keeps getting better. It just keeps getting better the more and more we do this. So, good luck with it. And you're doing great, and just keep it up. So Shane Patterson, thank you for the super chat. You recommend 2-to-1 ratio of fat to protein. Most steaks are under 1-to-1. If butter is not okay, what do you suggest I do to get my ratio up to 2-to-1? Butter's totally fine. Butter's fine for almost everybody. Some people with very sensitive and severe autoimmunities, maybe not, to see how you go. Most people with autoimmunity seem to do fine on butter. Ghee is fine too. That's another alternative. Or tallow, animal fat, and fat trimmings from the butcher. So yeah, most meat is trimmed to a fault, and but the benefit of that everything being trimmed to hell is that they have a lot of fat trimmings at the butcher, and you can usually ask for that, and they'll give them to you generally for free. I have seen people charge a small amount, typically if they're going to use that for sausages and things like that. But sometimes they like the offcuts they just throw away. Quite often the butcher will sell you that for either for very cheap or actually just give it to you because they actually have to pay to get this stuff taken away. So ask your butcher if the price isn't meeting your expectations. Try calling around to other butchers. We did that here in Perth locally. In America, most butchers will just give it to you because they pay to get it taken away, so they're happy for you to take it. So when we spoke to some butchers here, some were a bit more unreasonable, trying to charge like $20 a kilo, and we're like, no thanks. But then the other ones are very reasonable. It's like $5 a kilo, like totally fine, happy to pay that. Especially for like grass-fed and finished ones, where it's like dark yellow fat, fantastic. And I ordered that now from my new sponsor, the Stockman steaks. They have that, I think they call it like tallow or whatever. It looks like tallow brick on the picture, but it's actually packs of fat. And you just cut that up in little chunks, you fry them up, you eat them, and they taste great. My mom used to do that when she would trim off the fat from steaks, because it was all about the low fat, but she would cut that off and then she'd sort of fry them up and it would just smell amazing. And you sort of have some of these things, they just tasted so good. So those are things you do. Butter's totally fine. Try the butter. If it's working for you and you feel good on it, then just do that. Just do the butter. And but there's also the fat trimmings from the butcher, tallow, lard, duck fat, ghee, all those sorts of things are options too. So good luck with that. Meredith Campbell, thank you for the super chat. Can I still try carnivore struggling because of lack of stomach acid because of Nexium for hiatus? Have diverticulitis too, please help. No, you can definitely still do that. The Nexium may or may not be as necessary as well, because when you're eating carbohydrates, again, your insulin goes up. And what people don't understand when they talk about, well, this is a normal reaction, you just eat carbohydrates, your insulin goes up, and that just drives the energy into cells. This is a normal process. And you can say that all you want, but it's not normal at the levels that we're experiencing when we're eating exogenous carbohydrates, because blood sugar is not supposed to go that high. That is toxic to humans. That kills us eventually. That's what kills diabetics. That's what makes their organs fail. They lose their vision and they get their limbs chopped off and eventually die. That's because of high blood sugar. So no, that is not normal at that level. And then the insulin goes up to combat this because it's toxic at that level. And then the insulin goes up to, yes, drive this energy into cells. Oh, well, that's normal. No, at levels down here, that's normal. Levels way the hell up here, that's very abnormal, and things are going out of balance. Specifically because insulin doesn't just drive energy into cells. Insulin does over 100 other things in your body that are very important. And so when your insulin's at 5, which is a very nice place for insulin to be, it's affecting everything at a 5. And then you eat some pasta or bread, and it slams up to 35, and it's affecting everything at a 35. That's abnormal. That's not good for you. And then you get insulin resistance, and all of a sudden you have your fasting insulin is 72, like my patient a few months ago, and his unfasted postprandial insulin is probably over 100. So that's going to affect things very negatively. One of the things that it does is insulin increases the acidity of your stomach acid, so you can get a lot more reflux and problems. You more reflux and problems with stomach acid and things like that. The hiatus hernia, that's a structural abnormality that can just make things, so that things structurally are so that you can have more problems and potentially get it back into your esophagus and regurgitate more easily. And but either way, the Nexium is sort of offsetting that. But when you stop eating carbohydrates, it will actually go back to a more normal. Now it'll still be very acidic, but it'll be normally acidic. It will be appropriate for our anatomy and physiology. So even if you are on Nexium, you can absolutely still do a carnivore diet. You don't have to. In fact, it's still going to be easier to absorb and digest any meat than anything else, because that's the easiest thing for us to digest. Plants don't get digested. Like, we just don't break them down. We don't have the enzymes to break down cellulose. No animal has cellulase. It's the microorganisms that eat the fiber and produce fatty acids and protein as a result of that. So it's it's perfectly fine to do that. To eat that on a Nexium, that's fine. Don't worry about that. Just eat fatty meat, and until it's comfortable. If you're getting a bit of upset stomach, maybe eat a bit less and see how you go. Diverticulitis is that's what do you do for diverticulitis? You go on a low residue diet anyway, so low fiber, no fiber, so you can rest your bowel, and that's what a carnivore diet is. You have very little of that is going to go out in waste, and so you're going to actually do a lot better with that anyway. So yeah, all these things are actually totally fine on a carnivore diet. So good luck with that. Okay. All right. So it's just a good comment here from Sir Praise the Sun. Where do lions get their Gatorade, pre-workout, and pancakes for carbs? And how do they sprint? Like, I don't know. That is a mystery of the ages. How they actually exercise without all the pre-workout and carbohydrates and carb loading and things like that. I mean, where they get their glycogen? I mean, you have to have carbs for glycogen. I mean, it's impossible any other way. How do whales, swim for, thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of miles, and don't eat for 8 months in a row? Damn it. Where are they getting their carbs? There must be like big soy plantations down in the sea that we're just not knowing about. So obviously, yes, a good point. People just I think they just don't like to think anymore. I certainly not taught how to think anymore, and sometimes taught not to think. Just no, just trust the experts. Just trust the experts. Oh, but not those experts. No. Just these experts, the ones that we want you to listen to. I'm like, oh, shut up. You need to think for yourself. If anybody's telling you, no, just blindly follow who we tell you to do, that's just mini Hitler. They're just trying to gear up for totalitarianism. They're trying to get you geared up for that as well. So, don't talk to, baby Hitler, baby Lenin, baby Stalin, baby Mao. Just ignore their ass. You need to listen. No, you need to shut the fuck up, and I'll listen. I'll do what the hell I want, and I'll listen to myself. Thank you very much. Sorry for swearing. As I try to tell you guys, I normally swear way too much. So the fact that I'm being this good, this consistently for this long, I think I deserve some sort of recognition for that. Maybe Rosalind can let you know just how rampantly I swear on a normal basis. So you're welcome. S Golan 90, thank you for the super chat. Hey doc, if we are true carnivores, why are we able to metabolize carbs, sugar, or develop the ability to do so in the first place? Thanks. Well, look, we weren't always carnivores. We had the ability to eat these sorts of things historically, and so it does give a survival advantage because we can eat other things. We can survive on them. And when you're looking at things in evolutionary terms, you don't lose the ability to do something unless it confers a survival advantage to do so. So, because that's just how that works, because the ones that don't have that trait tend to die off and they tend not to have kids. And so it's that trait that actually is a big survival advantage. So, having the ability to break down carbs and sugars and absorb them is an advantage to anybody, because if you don't have that ability, then you're limiting more resources. And in a famine period, when you're trying to eat something else, that's not that great. but pretty much any animal can absorb simple carbohydrates. Not all animals make amylase, but most of them do, and so they can still break down starches. Some don't have amylase in their saliva, but they can make it from their pancreas. And either way, they can absorb simple carbohydrates, like simple sugars, and there are carbohydrates in meat. I mean, there's glycogen in meat, and so you actually do get these things on a carnivore diet. So you actually do need this stuff on a carnivore diet, because there are carbohydrates that you're going to break down and absorb as well. It's just not the mass quantities of these things that we see in processed carbs, or starchy vegetables and things like that, or fruit, very sweet, unnaturally sweet fruit that we've arranged, and bred and intensively bred to be much more sweet. So plenty of carnivores do still have that ability. We're no exception. It does confer a survival advantage to be able to eat potatoes and survive. It's just not optimal. But also there are carbohydrates in meat, and so you need that ability there too, to break down the glycogen and certainly absorb the simple sugars. And you look at your cells. I mean, there are carbohydrate components to many proteins, to many receptors, to many parts of your cell, to many parts of the animal, and so that's important. That's important to be able to contend with that, break it down and absorb it. So yeah, that's not actually abnormal. I've seen some things where they say that like lions and big cats don't make amylase in their saliva, but that doesn't mean they don't make it in their pancreas. And I've seen other ones that said that they do. So I don't know about that. I think it's generally accepted that they don't, but I have actually seen some that said that they did. So it's either way, it doesn't really matter. If we have had that ability because we were herbivorous before, you don't lose that trait unless there's a survival advantage to lose that trait. But also, even herbivores. Look at gorillas. They're not eating carbs. They're not eating like roots and tubers and starchy vegetables. They're eating fiber, and that fiber, amylase won't break that down. It won't do any of that. It's the bacteria in their gut that is in their hind gut, which is their cecum, which is very, very, very long. Our equivalent is the appendix, because that was a survival advantage to lose that. We did have a very elongated cecum, presumably, and then that shrunk down to almost nothing, because that's very energy dependent. And so we traded our gut length for our brain size, and we needed more nutrient dense food, meat. And so that did give a survival advantage to lose that big useless gut that we weren't using anymore. And so we have a smaller one. So they have a big hind gut, and the bacteria eat the fiber, because it's only bacteria and protozoa and these single-celled organisms that can even make cellulase. Termites don't even make cellulase. It's the protozoa in their gut that eats the cellulose and produce cellulase. And as a byproduct, they produce saturated fat, and then the microorganisms die off and they get absorbed as protein. So do gorillas have amylase? Do gorillas have the ability to break these things down? Why? They don't need it. They're absorbing saturated fat and protein. So it's the same thing. We need fat and protein. Lions need fat and protein. Gorillas need fat and protein, and we get those from our food source. That's really the main thing. Some of us have some amylase, some of us don't. Doesn't really matter. You still just need fat and protein. That's the main thing. Shane Patterson, thank you for the super chat. GF been trying to increase meat. Girlfriends has been trying to increase meat, but says she has low appetite for red meat and feels sick when eating only meat, even one meal. Any recommendations? Yeah, look, we're conditioned to think that this is really bad for us. Women especially have taken that to heart, and there seems to be some sort of psychological reason for that. They're just much more likely They're just much more coachable. And people say this too. It's just like, when you're coaching girls, they really pay attention. They really listen. They try to do what you tell them to do. And like guys just sort of do whatever the hell they want. And so you don't have as much coachability in some guys. And so you have to, that's why, being able to learn, being able to be coachable is a good trait, that coaches look for in young athletes. And so, but, girls, women seem to have taken that and saying, okay, well, this is bad for me. I'm not going to do that. Okay. Makes sense. And if you believe that, that's the right thing to do. Guys are a bit more headstrong, like, yeah, screw that. And so I like it. I enjoy it. So I'm just going to do it. A bit more hedonistic. And that can be good in this circumstance when you're being lied to and you're just trusting your natural instincts. And the other side of it is that it could be very bad because you end up doing things that are bad. In any case, we train ourselves and condition ourselves to think that meat's bad and to think that fat's bad. And we have a psychosomatic reaction where it makes us physically ill. I would get that in my late 30s when I knew that this was the right way to go. When I would eat fat, I just couldn't do it. And I had to slowly work myself into it. And so that's what you do. Just ease into it. It's just a little bit more, She doesn't have to eat if it doesn't taste good. If she feels unwell, don't eat. That's fine. Your body can tell you that. If meat doesn't taste good, you're not hungry and you'll eat a lot less. You don't need nearly as much. And so you just eat fatty meat until it stops tasting good. If you can't eat big chunks of fat, you cut a small piece of that fat off, put it with the lean meat, eat that together, and you say like, okay, that actually tastes good together. And you can do that. And you just recondition yourself and really decondition, that programming, that we had of listening to the experts and never eat fat because fat's so bad for you, even though it has never been bad for us ever in human existence. And then the argument goes like, well, but we weren't living all that long. Says who? The census data didn't say that. In the 1800s, if you made it to adulthood, you'd live at some very similar length of time that we live now. It's just average life expectancy from birth was 38 in 1850 because the infant mortality rate was so high. And 50 years later, it was a lot higher than that because infant mortality, or the total life expectancy from birth, was a lot higher because it was the infant mortality rate had improved significantly. And so, it's completely false. Oh, people weren't living long enough in the 1800s and before that to experience these diseases. Like, really? Have you read a book? Because they were written by people, and some of those people actually have biographies, and you can actually see like how long they lived. How old was Mark Twain? How old was Sam Adams when he died? How old was John Adams? Second president of the United States, born in the mid 1700s, died in the mid 1800s. He was 91. All the founding fathers, look them up. They're all in their 80s and 90s when they died. Ben Franklin was 64 when the Revolutionary War broke out. And then, funny enough, I seem to recall that the minimum age required to even apply for the job of president of the United States was 35. Isn't that? Well, that's funny. If everyone dies at 35, that's a funny age to set a minimum. And I'm pretty sure we've had presidents in the 1700s and 1800s, which is funny because these people are so smart and they know so much, and I'm surely they'd look it up, right? And they'd understand that there's historical figures that we have clear documentation of that were much older than that. And there's, what was it, Socrates? Is that who I'm thinking of? Who was in his 70s and they had to kill him, and he was so sharp that it just pissed everyone off in Athens, so they had to kill him by eating a plant, by the way. They made him drink hemlock. So, I mean, that's just nonsense that people weren't living long enough to experience these diseases. That's just ridiculous. And I just spoke with a gentleman, Dr. Verma from India. He's an emergency physician over in India. And he said he treated a boy who's 17 years old. He came in with a heart attack. 17-year-old kid had a heart attack, right? Vegetarian, by the way, vegan vegetarian. And of this mostly plant-based nation. Everyone says, oh, but plants are so bad for us and meat is so good for us. Explain India. India explains that. 20 years ago, the average person in India only ate 5 kilos of meat a year. A year, right? I eat more than that in a week. way more than that in a week, you know? And, and then in the last 20 years, it's actually dropped down to 3 kilos a year, right? And the metabolic disease rate has actually sprung up in that time. It's gotten worse, right? He said something that was like 30% of people have metabolic syndrome and disease, and 30%, 30% of people in India had diabetes, full-blown diagnosed diabetes. And this is very, so a lot of people living rurally, they may not ever get that diagnosis. They may not have access to healthcare. So diagnosed diabetes, 30%. That's 3 times the diabetes rate of America. The slovenly Americans who just eat a whole bunch of processed meat and processed foods and red meat. Oh, these guys are eating 3 kilos a year, and a lot of them aren't eating any. And 30%, they have 3 times higher diabetes rates. So it's just flat out ridiculous that people even make these contentions. They're either complete liars or just too stupid to take any advice from anyway. Either way, these are not people that you need to listen to. If they're so flagrantly incorrect, either intentionally or because their brains don't work, that like this is no one you want to take advice from in anything else. I mean, people get things wrong, and that's fine. And so I agree with some things that people say, and I disagree with other things that they say. That doesn't mean that I hate them. Broke clock is right twice a day. But some people, when they get these things so intensely wrong, and it's so easy to look up, it's it's just like, okay, well, what else are you phoning in? Like we just can't really trust anything you say at this point. Like Ansel Keys, the guy's a known fraud. He was defrauding people for the majority of his career. When did that start? When did he start being a sellout? I mean, presumably he had to do some good work in order to sell his reputation and integrity. But when did that start? Can you trust anything he did? Because he's unscrupulous. Maybe he cut corners on other things. Maybe he just did things and published them just so he could get some recognition. Fits the profile. There are people with Alzheimer's. They say, well, it's this beta amyloid plaques. And that's what you're doing. There's a landmark paper that came out, supposedly proving that, showing that, and turned out it was total fraud. It was total garbage. And that just came out last year. So no, that has nothing to do with it. And they just defrauded people just so they could get the reputation, just so they could publish a landmark paper and get their name on the map. And get everyone tenure, and everyone's all happy and patting each other's back. And now they've got tenure, so can't get rid of them. But it's fraud. It's absolute fraud. And so when did the fraud start with Ansel Keys? Who knows? But I just don't trust anything he says. Don't trust anything he does. And and the same thing with these sorts of things. So long story short, we've been conditioned to think something that is inherently untrue, and we're getting psychosomatic responses as a result of that. So just lead into it. Just ease into it. Eat what tastes good. Stop eating when it doesn't taste good. Feeling a bit nauseous, just stop. If she has to sort of do a slower transition and include some other stuff too, just eating more fatty meat and less of the other stuff is already going to make a big difference. And if you can start easing into that and eating more and more meat and getting used to the fat, eventually she might be able to just drop everything else, but don't, you don't want to force it, because, it might be that she just goes too much and goes, nope, I'm not doing this. And just mentally can't get her head around it. And then, might just not really want to do it and not be motivated to do it. So, it's okay. It's okay to ease into these things too. So good luck to both of you. Robert Farinelli, thank you for the super chat. Good ways to get heavy metals, mainly lead, out of my body. Just demoed some plaster in an old house and probably got a good dose of lead paint dust. Ew, that's not good. Prevention is the best treatment, right? So it's just, obviously, I'm sure you're wearing masks and all these sorts of things, but hopefully just try to avoid those sorts of things and do wear all the protective gear that you can to avoid any exposure. Things like lead and heavy metals, they're actually very good chelating agents that you can talk to your doctor. You can always, if you're worried about that, I would get tested. I would test your heavy metals. You can get blood tests to do that. Sometimes there's like specialized labs that do that, and there are some doctors that specialize in that sort of thing. But if you end up being high on these things, your body's going to work these things out eventually for most of these things. And you have those forever chemicals, and those aren't going anywhere, apparently. But the things like lead, your body can get these things out as long as you stop the exposure and allow your body to work normally on a carnivore diet, right? And so that can help, but depending on what level you are, it might be a good idea to use a chelating agent, depending on your level. So just get it checked, get a blood test with your doctor, and if your levels are high, for that or other heavy metals that have a chelating agent that can help pull this out of your body, might use that. But just talk to your doctor about that as well. Otherwise, your body will work this stuff out. You just have to stop exposing yourself to it. And if you keep exposing yourself and it's sort of building up and building up, then you might need some help from your doctor. So don't. I like doing things naturally, but there are medicines that actually really do help people, and those are great. I don't have anything against that side of pharmacology. I just, the new iteration of pharmacology where they're just trying to make things that help chronic symptoms, and it's symptom management, and so that you can live with a disease. They're not trying to cure a disease. Something like lead poisoning. There's not too much research going into that, and there's a reason why we haven't had any new breakthroughs or even any new significant research into new antibiotics in the last 3 decades, because you cure something, you have they're on it for 2 weeks and that's it. That's not paying the bills. Something they have to take every single day for the rest of their lives. That's what buys the yachts, right? And so that's just good business. That's the direction you go. That's the product we're going to make, because that's what's going to make us the most money. That's what's going to make us the most successful. So that's what's happening. So we just need to recognize that and go to other places. But we do have really good medicines for acute things as well. And so, what we need to do is we need to get rid of these chronic diseases ourselves, because they're not going to cure it for us. We need to do that ourselves. Besides, there's no medicine that cures this anyway. The medicine is eating right and just not exposing yourself to poison like lead, but also plants. And so when you stop doing that and you just get healthy, then all of a sudden there's no market for their drugs, really. You're going to force them into doing things that are actually useful to people, because they're very smart people and they can do a lot of good for people. We just need to shift the market over so that it's not profitable for them to perpetuate chronic disease, because there is no chronic disease. We're going to get rid of that, right? That's what we're doing here. But there are good things that your doctor can help you with, and that is definitely one of them. Good luck with that. Hope it's okay. Hope you didn't get too much in your system. The Alligetis, thank you very much for the super chat. Hello, doctor. I'm hypothyroid, male, 39 years old, 5'8", Oklahoma, 242, carnivore for 30 days, lost 8 pounds. Is goat meat enough because I can't get beef since I'm Hindu? Yeah, goat's great. Yeah, I mean, it's a ruminant, right? So it's very, very nutritious. It's very good for you. And yeah, absolutely. You can definitely do goat or lamb. And that's totally fine too. So yeah, absolutely. And well done. You're already losing weight. You're doing well. You're hypothyroid. Make sure you're working with your doctor to get any sort of thyroid support that you need, if you need it. And hopefully this helps ramp up your body's ability to make thyroid hormone. I don't know why you're hypothyroid. Do check. Do you have Hashimoto's? Is there a reason, an underlying reason why you're hypothyroid? Is it just because the way you're eating is just slowing things down? That's very common. But Hashimoto's is an autoimmune disease, and that gets better too. But I have over 100 patients with Hashimoto's, and I'm sure I'll see a few today. And antibodies just come right down, especially with red meat, the ruminant meat. So just goat. Yeah, so goat's fantastic. So definitely can do that. Nap, thank you for the super chat. How many hours of sleep do you get? Not as much as I'd like. I generally work till about midnight or past, and then I'm doing admin and emails and messages and scheduling things after that. So I don't get enough sleep because it's just too busy at the moment. I'm going to have to sort of look into that. I'm going to have to sort of cut back on the the consultations and the interviews that I'm doing, because it's just every single day. I'm going till midnight, and then I've got all I get so many messages every day. 5 different email accounts and Instagram and all these other sorts of things. It's just I just can't keep on top of it. And I would like to get 7 to 8 hours of sleep a night. I'd like to get as much sleep as my body naturally wants, and I wake up naturally every day without an alarm. That's what I would like. But I don't always get that. So, but at the same time, because of the way I'm eating, I can handle it a lot better. But do get as much as you can. Do try to get to the point that you're not that you're not waking up with an alarm, that you don't need to wake up with an alarm, because it's much better for you to get a proper amount of sleep. It's very important for you. It's very good for your brain and your body and everything else. So, so do that. Don't, get as much sleep as you possibly can. And I think L's in the chat. So hi, L. I'm not seeing where a chat is down here. Let me see. Where is he? Where are you? Show yourself. There we go. Hi, everyone. Hello. Hello, Ellie Melly. Nice to see you. Travel Peeps, thank you very much for the super chat. Very generous of you. Been carnivore for 1 year. I'm type 2 on Bristol stool chart. Eat lots of fat. Drink 2 to 2.5 liters of water daily. Have reluctantly added plant ferments for microbiome. Any tips to get to type 4 or help things flow easier? More fat, right? So if you are having dry, hard stools, it's not enough fat by definition every time. So if your stools aren't passing more than once a month, you'll still get dry, soft stools or soft stools if you are soft stools for what was I going to say? Soft stools, regardless, just because there's enough fat in there, right? What is going on here? Sorry, hold on 1 second. That's what that is. And so you just need to keep eating fat. Water. I would probably generally recommend people drink a bit more water. The plant ferments, you can do that, but just remember that once you have established a microbiome, that you just perpetuate it with the things that you're eating, so you don't have to keep doing that. You can you just get the microbiome, and then the meat that you're eating perpetuates that. So the Inuit, when they're just eating meat, they have very, very good microbiomes. Your oral biome changes as well, and that changes the quality and character and type of bacteria that are in your mouth. You're chewing food, you're chewing meat, that goes down as well. So sorry, just have to do this. And so once you get to the point that you have an established oral biome and microbiome, you don't need to keep doing that with ferments, I don't think. And a lot of people don't use ferments either way, and their microbiome ends up becoming very, very healthy after several months as well, and very diverse. So I just check, and then you can see where you're at, and do you need to keep doing ferments? Also remember, fermented dairy, that's legal too, and you just want to get fermented dairy that has as little carbohydrates as possible, 0 if you can. But if you want softer stools, you need more fat. And I know you're eating a lot of fat, but it's a lot more fat than you think is how much you need. So just good luck with that. Just keep ramping it up, and you'll get there. We do have a number of super chats, so maybe we'll cut off the super chats for now. And I have about an hour-ish to go. And if we have more time, then we have more time. And if we have, we can open things back up and answer other questions. We can do that. But just for now, just so we don't get stuck like last time, we'll just stop the super chats for now. And we'll just go through the rest that we have and see where we go or see where we're at. Greg Emerson, thank you very much for the super chat. Hey, Doc, is there a reason you don't eat eggs? And do you think eggs are optimal for a carnivore diet, or should we just stick to meat? I think eggs are actually, honorary meat. It's got all the nutrients that you need to turn into meat, right? It's going to turn into a baby chicken. So that's going to have a lot of nutrients. So I think eggs are actually great. It's just that some people don't tolerate them well. They may react to them negatively. Pasture raised eggs from chickens that are just eating bugs in their natural diet are going to be much more healthy and much more nutrient dense than anything else. So even like free range, all that sort of stuff doesn't mean anything. It just means they have access to outside, but they generally don't go outside. They stay in the barn where it's warm and all their friends are and their food is. They have little doggy doors where they could go out. They almost never do. And so, it's a bit of a trick, but pasture raised is supposed to be out on grass and just eating outside. They'll still probably get feed though, so you never know. But that's the thing with eggs. I do eat eggs. I don't eat a ton of them. I think it's just out of convenience because it's a lot easier just to grab a steak and put it on the grill and eat it. Whereas like eggs, you're gonna I need like a dozen eggs to get going. And so just making a dozen eggs and cracking them all and doing all that, it's just a bit more effort, and I'm lazy. So I think that's probably why. But I don't have a problem with eggs. I do fine with them. I do feel the best on beef, but if you like eggs, go for eggs, and you're not, as long as you're not reacting negatively to them, go to town. That's totally fine. But I feel best on beef. And sometimes I'll add a couple eggs to my steak and enjoy it. But just eat what you enjoy. Eggs are great. Eggs are, honorary meat. They have all the nutrients that you need to make meat, and that's what we're going for. We're going for nutrients that make meat because we are meat. So yeah, go for it. Zio, thank you for the super chat. What do you think about ivermectin? There's people blocking people for discussing and saying it's poisonous mixed with certain plant inhibitors. So I don't know about plant inhibitors or anything like that. I understand that people were having comments timed out because they were being rude, especially to my sister, which is a no-go. You'd be rude to my sister, you can fuck right off and just don't follow me and don't come here because I don't need you, I don't want you, and you're not welcome. And so if you do that and you're rude to my sister or my friends or my girlfriend, you're going to be blocked and you're going to be out the window. Ivermectin, has a lot of research on it. Is extremely good in various circumstances, and is very beneficial. It's used. I think it's been over 1 billion doses have been given around the world, and so it's one of the safer medications that have ever existed, and it works for many, 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 many things. And so it's very beneficial. It depends on what you're using it for. I mean, medicines, you don't need to take medicine just for the sake of taking medicine. You take medicine for the specific outcome that you're trying to achieve. And so if you have an infection or a parasite or something like that, ivermectin would help with. Even viral infections have been shown to be benefited by ivermectin. And that's something that's now being recognized. It was made illegal in many areas. You weren't allowed to prescribe it. You could lose your license if you prescribed it for people, during the lockdowns and everything like that. And now it's recognized that, actually, it actually works really well. And there's, even at the time, there was like 60 randomized controlled trials showing that it was very beneficial. So that's what the data showed. And there were more than that. There were over 90 just controlled trials showing its benefit, large ones. And so I think it's a very good medication, but you take medication for a specific medical issue. And so so that's the thing. It's so I don't know about the discussion about it being poisonous or mixed with certain sorts of things. medicines are poisons. They're just poisons that give a benefit during certain circumstances that outweigh the negative outcomes and the negative aspects. So that's like any medication. So you would take these things for a specific issue. If if I had some sort of infection or exposure or something like that could help with, I would happily take that, because it's been shown to be helpful for certain things. I wouldn't take it for other things. I wouldn't just take it just to take it. But I have no problem with that. And I saw early on, during all the craziness, that ivermectin was actually very helpful. And then there was leaked government documents that actually said they knew that, even though they made it illegal after that document. They not that it was released, but that when they wrote it, they said that it was very beneficial and actually was a cure for these sorts of things. And yet they still made it illegal, which I think is just criminal. I mean, I think that's literally a crime against humanity. You're withholding something that could be potentially life-saving for a lot of people in favor of other things that are just still on patent, so that you can make your cronies more money. That's disgusting. And and people like that should be held up in international court for crimes against humanity. And we should face justice for that, because people died as a result of that and not being allowed to get that. My cousin was one of them. And had she been able to get those sorts of things, maybe she would have, but she didn't get the chance. And so a lot of other people's family members died as well. And so I got a lot of time for ivermectin anyway, but like any other medicine, only when it's actually warranted. So Maya, thank you for the super chat. Will intermittent fasting help me lose weight while on carnivore? Yes and no, because the thing is that most of the time you'll naturally be doing something along those lines, where you'll be eating in a shorter amount of window, or maybe only once a day. I typically eat once a day, twice a day at most, if I'm working out, especially. And so that people say, like, oh, well, you're intermittent fasting, you're doing that. I was like, well, no, I'm not, because what fasting is intentionally withholding food from when you're hungry and you want to eat, but you're like, no, I'm gonna abstain. That's what fasting is. Just not being hungry is just not being hungry. I mean, if I'm only hungry once a day and I eat once a day and I'm fine, that's not fasting. But it looks like it. It looks like you're intermittent fasting. So that's the yes part of it. The no part of it is if you're intentionally withholding food and you continually do that, and you do that, day after day after day, you're going to slow your metabolism down. And you can actually stall weight loss. And again, it's not weight loss, it's fat loss that you're looking for. You're not looking for weight loss. You don't want to lose muscle and bone. You want to lose fat. And so if you lose fat, but you put on muscle and bone, you're not going to lose weight. And so you need to remember that. And quite often when people are having a stall, it's not actually a stall. It's that they're working out and they're replacing their fat with the muscle and bone. Then you can do things like take Ozempic, that horrible poison that's been foisted across the planet, again, to make billions and billions and billions of dollars. The research on Ozempic for weight loss, by their own estimate, was that you'd lose weight generally because you felt so sick and just nauseated, you just couldn't eat. And then after that, after about 2 years, those symptoms would go away. Your appetite would come back. And because you've just been eating just little bits of chocolate and candy the whole time because you couldn't stomach anything else, and you basically just starved yourself for the last 2 years, now you have horrific eating habits, and your appetite comes back. And then you eat a whole bunch of garbage, and then you end up putting on more weight than you lost initially. And the weight that you lost wasn't just fat. What they showed was that a large portion of this was actually lean body mass, was muscle mass and bone density, which you just can't afford to lose at any point in your life, especially when we get into middle and late age. But I mean, kids, why would you do that to kids? So you lose a lot of lean body mass, And then, so you're losing weight, but you're not losing the weight that's healthy. You're losing weight that is very unhealthy to lose. And then when you put weight back on, because you have such horrible eating habits, you put on fat. You're not getting back the muscle and bone. You're just getting back fat. You get back more fat than the muscle and bone that you lost. So after 2 years, people tended to regain more weight than they lost. So that's not good. So it's not about weight. It's about body composition. And really, it's about health. So you just eat what's healthy for you. And the body composition comes as a result of that. And that just happens down the road. That's a consequence. That's a secondary outcome. The primary outcome is your health. That's what the most important part of this is. And if you intentionally withhold meals and intentionally withhold from eating, you will slow down your metabolism, and you can stall, and you can actually start gaining weight eating less. Bariatric surgeons will tell you that, like women in particular, if they eat less than 1,200 calories a day, they will not lose weight. So they have to eat a minimum threshold to actually be able for their body to actually let go and let go of that excess fat, because they're storing it, because like, no, we're going to die. We need to save this. And because we're trying to save you. So your body doesn't know, it's not a conscious being. It's taking inputs, right? So the input is that there's no food available. Okay. We're in a famine. We're going to shut it down. And so that's what's going to happen. So no, I wouldn't do that. I would just eat until fatty meat stops tasting good. If that's once a day, it's once a day. If that's twice a day, it's twice a day. If that's 32 times a day, it's 32 times a day. It won't be. You eat until you get that bite that tastes like cardboard. Typically, when people are losing weight, that's going to be once a day, twice at the outside. But just make sure you're getting enough fatty meat until it stops tasting good. You generally won't eat all that much, and you'll look like you're intermittent fasting, but you won't actually be fasting. You'll just be eating when you're hungry, and that's what you do. And that's the other thing. When you do these tricks and gimmicks, and you're fasting and starving and doing all these sorts of things, eventually you get to the end of it and you just go, okay, well, something's got to change because this isn't sustainable. Or the Ozempic, and you're losing weight, and now your appetite comes back, and now what happens? Now your pattern of behavior and how you're functioning is now incongruent with a healthy lifestyle. Whereas if you're just eating fatty meat until it stops tasting good, you can do that at any day, at any point, at any stage in your life, because at different times you're going to need more or less. And if you're just listening to your body and eating until it stops tasting good, your body's going to tell you what it needs. Today it needs 4,000 calories. Tomorrow it needs 3,000. Next day it needs 4,000. Now it needs 2,000. Now it needs 5,000. It doesn't matter. It's going to change on different days. If you're losing fat and your body eventually gets down to a stable body fat percentage, you're going to need more. That's all there is to it, because you're not going to be going on your fat stores anymore. You need to actually get more energy and nutrients in to run your body and maintain your body fat. And so that's what you do, and your appetite goes up. And so by the time you get to that stable point, now you have the eating habits and the lifestyle that are going to be conducive to perpetuate that, right? So that's really important, to just lay down patterns of behavior that you're going to be able to continue and perpetuate for the rest of your life, to continue to get maximal results and the most benefit out of your life and your health. Voigt Bernard, thank you very much for the super chat. Doc, on a lion diet, the D is working extra great. Okay. Wife thinks very nice. It's like a reusable booster rocket. What's going on with the vascular system? So, first of all, you have hormonal changes that can be true, but also early sign of atherosclerosis and different sorts of hypertension and other sorts of things can be erectile dysfunction issues. And so yes, it can help with your vascular system. It can help with the response to, because the thing is, you have to dilate out your arteries in order to gain and maintain an erection. And so one of the reasons that people can get high blood pressure, these sort of idiopathic high blood pressure, is due to insulin resistance. And so you have chronically high insulin and you get insulin resistance. And now insulin, actually, one of the 100 plus things that it affects is also the expansion and contraction of expansion of your vessels, your arteries. And so when it's insulin sensitive, insulin goes, it says, oh, okay, that's going to go up, and it expands out, and your blood pressure drops. So once you get insulin resistance, it's just like, no, we're not listening to you anymore. We're just going to stay closed. And so you get high blood pressure. But what you also get is erectile dysfunction, because now those things aren't dilating out to allow more blood in and maximal blood flow into the phallus and to gain an erection. And then obviously testosterone, things like that are going to improve. I regularly see men's testosterone go up dramatically. That was the thing. What was that question before? I actually meant to talk about like stress and things like that. But it's it's very true that hormones can get better, but also stress and these sorts of things can affect all these things negatively. Getting better sleep, all these things can help you and get things working better in a number of different ways. And but also with your testosterone and your hormones, and stress and sleep are involved in that as well. And so when people address their sleep, address their stress, and start exercising, doing vigorous anaerobic exercise, they do better. And their testosterone levels get a lot better. So I see that regularly. People significantly improving their testosterone. Some people as much as doubling or even tripling their testosterone levels in a number of months. 4 to 6 months. It's incredible, absolutely incredible. So that's gonna affect things as well. And so, but yeah, it can definitely affect and sort of reverse out of these sort of creeping metabolic issues. And then you see the results in a lot of different ways. The erectile dysfunction issues can be sort of a weather vane of other things going on, and you sort of say like, oh, okay, or like a canary in the coal mine, that's something that gets affected first, and so that's getting better because a lot of other things are getting better too. So glad to hear that. Glad that the wife is pleased. So that's great. Cyprian, thank you for the super chat. Hi, 4 months carnivore, and my BO smells like tallow and butter. How long will this last? It's bothering me. Girlfriend says she can't smell it, but I can. Tallow and butter aren't all that offensive. It may be that you smell it differently. Do remember too that when your hormones change, your odor will change too. Your pheromones change, your body odor changes. When your testosterone level goes up, your body odor will change. And so when you're charged up, you actually secrete different pheromones and scents and things like that. And so you're charged up either aggressively or sexually. That actually changes your odor. And so that can be a thing too. It's not necessarily butter and tallow. It could be because your hormones are changing, and that's affecting the way your body smells. And so that's not necessarily a bad thing. Butter smells nice. That's just my opinion, but I'm not wrong. And so it may be different, but it's probably not that much of an issue. Some people have noticed that. Some people have noticed that they have a bit slightly different odors and changes in their own scents, but that's it's not necessarily a bad thing, because again, your hormones could be changing, and that could be a sign of things improving. It's hard to say if that's going to change or not. I don't know. It's not something that people typically go into and talk about. Not everybody really notices their own odor that much, or that it's changed. And so I don't know if that's going to change too much. If it's a hormonal issue and you're stabilized your hormones, probably will stay. But it might go away or might stay. It's hard to say. But if it's not too much of a big deal, I probably wouldn't worry about it. It's just your body doing what your body's supposed to do. And so, it just sort of is what it is. And I'm sorry that it bugs you, but it doesn't sound like it's the worst thing ever. If there's some sort of horrible, noxious ammonia sort of cat piss sort of smell, like I can see the problem. But butter and tallow is pretty innocuous, and so hopefully it changes to something that you're more comfortable with. But if not, then you just understand that this is just your body working and your hormones stabilizing and probably improving. So that's actually probably a good sign that your body odor is changing, because that means your body internally is changing as well, and very likely for the better. So good luck with all that. Wish you the best. Shuriken LM, good to see you, buddy. I haven't talked to you in a while. Thank you for the super chat as well. Anthony, is my case I went in vacation and I screwed up very bad, ate all the forbidden foods, and it sucks. I'm sorry. You don't have to apologize to me. It's you're the one that's getting hurt by this, not me. I went back urgently to control my diabetes, plus keep taking the pill for my heart valve too. Thanks to you, Louise. Well, look, I'm glad you're back on it. These sorts of things, you just take them as a learning experience. And so, when you slip up and you go on vacation and you do that, just see how it affects you. If you go in and, if you're eating all this sort of stuff and it's just like, yeah, I actually feel fine. I feel great. Well, look at that. That's fine. It's not going to happen though. You're going to feel worse and you're going to notice it. And when you see that contrast between you feeling really good and now you don't feel really good, and you say like, yeah, actually, I don't like that. I don't like not feeling that way. I like feeling strong, healthy, energetic, and significantly less pain and having much better blood sugar and diabetes control. That's what I like. That's what I want. That can help motivate you in the future to stay on track. And I mean, that's the thing. People say, "Oh, you need a lot of discipline for that." It's like, well, at first maybe, because it's a very new way of eating and it's very different. But if you understand the principles, you understand why you're doing it, it's a lot easier, because you're just like, yeah, I'm not going to eat that crap. And then when you get going with it and you see that contrast and you have those experiences when you do go back and say, oh, maybe I'll try this, and you see just how negatively it affects you, then it can really, really, really help you move forward, because you have no interest in doing that again. So look at that time when you were eating that stuff, see how you felt, see how long it took you to get out of feeling like that and get back to feeling good again, and how much it affected your diabetes negatively, and how long it took to normalize that and get back to where you were before. And then you just look at that and you just go like, okay, yeah, I'm not doing that again. I have no interest in doing that. That's where I'm at. I have no interest in eating any of this garbage, because it is garbage and it's just not going in my body. It's the whole idea of, your body's a temple and you should really respect that more than anything. It's true. You are your body. This is you. We think of ourselves as detached conscious mind, but we are not. We are part of this body, this living flesh. And so whatever spiritual connotations people want to draw, we are of this flesh and this is our body. And if you want to spend your entire life in pain and suffering, that's your business. But I have no interest in doing that. And so I'm not going to put anything in my body that's not going to benefit me or my body, because I am my body. This is me. And so no interest whatsoever in any of that stuff. And so, the longer you go with it and you see those contrasts, you just keep reinforcing that it's like no interest in doing any of that crap, and you'll do fine. Don't worry about it. I'm not mad at you. You're not kicked out of the club. It's totally fine. Just when you have a slip up like that, you just get back on straight away, and you'll be fine. And hopefully you're doing well. It's good to see you. It's been a while. Okay, Nicholas Green, thank you very much for the super chat. Let's see here. Do you need a multivitamin on Carnivore? I've just been taking the off-the-shelf Costco multivitamin gummies for years. Not sure if I should stop or not. Been Carnivore for only 5 weeks. So not the gummies. Don't do the gummies. You don't want the sugar. You don't want the artificial sweeteners or whatever the hell else, Red 40 or whatever the hell else they put in there that is just not fit for human consumption. If you want to take a multivitamin, you could. Some of these things are better than others. Some of these things are not really bioavailable. So they say they have iron, but there's like iron filings, it's like that's useless, and other things like that. So when you're starting a carnivore diet, most people are pretty deficient. You've been taking multivitamins for years. So whatever's in that multivitamin that you're actually extracting is actually bioavailable. You're probably fine. So you probably don't need to continue that. I wouldn't do the gummies. If you were going to take supplements, you might take something specific to what you're deficient in. So you get checked. You check your B12, your folate, your zinc, magnesium, vitamin D, and then you just see if you're low on these sorts of things. Maybe you take those. If you're really low on vitamin B12, you take a supplement for that, either under the tongue or an injection, because some people have absorption issues. They can't absorb B12 due to pernicious anemia, which is an autoimmune condition. It's much more common than people realize, and so you just take those if you need them. Most people are deficient, and so the reference range is way too low. So you want to be on the upper end of the reference range for these nutrients or above. If you're normal for B12, I can guarantee you're low, because you don't want everyone's low, and so the reference range is too low. So I would just take a look, and at the end of the day, just add in a bit of liver. If you're really deficient in these things. Liver is nature's multivitamin. There's nothing more bioavailable and accessible than the nutrients that are found in liver. And so tons of B12, tons of folate, tons of other sorts of things. They're absolutely exceptional nutrients, and they're very bioavailable. So if you are deficient, and most people are when they first start out, add in a bit of liver, just, a few ounces, 50 grams, whatever, just a day, just do that for a few weeks, and then, bang it down to, 3 days a week, whatever. And then check 6 months down the road, see where you're at. If you still need to have a bit of liver, maybe you're just, the meat that you're getting isn't as good as grass-fed and finished mammoth. And so, you need a bit more help with it. And organs are great for that. You don't need much. And most people don't need any. It just takes longer. It takes longer to get up there. And maybe you won't quite get up into that optimal level without the organs. So just check, see how you go. But eating just meat is going to be way more nutritious than anything else you've ever eaten. So you're going to improve. You're already going to improve. It's just going to be faster if you add in a bit of organs. And if you're really deficient in something, then you could take that supplement. But you may not be. If those multivitamins are any good, the ones from Costco, if they're bioavailable at all, then you're probably fine. If you were taking a multivitamin and drinking it with coffee, probably didn't absorb any of it at all, ever. If you're eating it with a bunch of plants, probably didn't absorb as much of it. And if you're just taking it on its own on an empty stomach, maybe if they were bioavailable, you'd probably be fine. So just check. Most people don't need to just eat meat, fatty meat, till it stops tasting good. If you're really deficient, you add in some organs or take a dedicated supplement early on, and then perpetuate that just with your diet. But eventually you'll catch up. Unless if you're really deficient, then get out of the deficiency. That's not safe to be that's so low that you're deficient. If you're under 4 or 540 in America, or you're under 400 anywhere else, that's a real deficiency of B12. And you can actually get brain damage and nerve damage and brain shrinkage as a result of that. That's not safe to stay there. Get an injection, take a sublingual B12 supplement, just get that and start eating liver. Just get the hell out of that situation, and then check yourself for pernicious anemia. Because that's not safe to be at those levels. Other than that, meat will get you there, and it will maintain you there. Bit of organs will put you over the top. So that's my advice on supplements. Bachelor Junior, thank you for the super chat. Well, my life has changed. I'm sitting here watching you cutting up a shoulder. Yeah, well, that's good. Well, I'm glad to hear that. I hope you're doing well with it, and I hope that and I hope you feel great and just keep going on in great health. So thanks for sharing with that. So Ripe Cantaloupe, thank you for the super chat. 2 weeks, no appetite till lunch, then indigestion. So yeah, look, your hunger signals are going to be very different. So you're going to have to relearn that, and you don't eat just because you have food in front of you. You eat until it stops tasting good. You listen to your body. You start eating meat, and if it starts going like, yeah, no, that's all I want, you stop there. So even if you have more in your plate or in your lunchbox. If your mom sent you to school with a lunchbox, which is people used to do, then you just leave it. You just save it for later. It's not that big a deal. Again, you can have these psychosomatic sort of responses where we're saying like, oh, meat's bad, oh, fat's bad, oh God, oh no. It's like, what the hell are you doing? This is bad for you. I had that, even though I knew for a cold frozen fact the fat was good for me and that I needed to eat more of it and I shouldn't be afraid of it. It still gave me that visceral response of like, no, hold on a second. You just spent the last 40 years avoiding this. What the hell are you doing? And so you just recondition yourself. So ease into it, and you'll be fine. If you just need a little bit at lunch, fine. If you're getting indigestion after lunch, don't necessarily need to eat. Just drink some water, and you have dinner at the end of the day. You'll be hungry. If it's an indigestion or upset stomach because of that conditioned response, you just have to ease into it. And eventually that will go away and you'll be fine. So just take it easy and listen to your body. Cyprian, thank you very much for the super chat. In a vicious cycle of carnivore, 6 days, and then having carbs, can't help myself. It's very hard for me. This coming from a man that did a 40-day water fast 2 years ago before my sinus carcinoma treatment. Well, you can always start with that. I don't recommend this typically, but if that's going to help you get through the carb craving times, maybe that's what you do. You just don't eat anything for 2 weeks. But that's not typically something I would recommend for people. Just remember that the carb cravings generally do go away after about 2 weeks. Right? The addiction side of things go away. And then it's just a matter of, well, I remembered that tasted good. And then you just don't eat it. If you are getting carb cravings, you're almost certainly hungry and you're not eating enough meat. You're not eating enough fat and you just need to eat more. So if you get cravings and your body wants carbs and says, ooh, that pizza looks good. That bread looks good. Say, okay, I'm hungry. So eat. But eat meat, eat fatty meat. And if you can get through 2 weeks, you can get through forever after that. It just goes away. So just light at the end of the tunnel. It's 2 weeks. You've done 40 days. So you'll be fine. It's just the thing is people thinking like, oh my God, I'm just going to have to deal with this forever. Screw it. Obviously that's not, that's not what you're going to be experiencing. After 2 weeks, you typically won't have very many carb cravings unless you really are under eating significantly. In the first 2 weeks, you can get those carb cravings, but a lot of times it does have to do with hunger because again, our hunger signals are very different and we don't experience that the same way. And so you just the body has to tell you to eat somehow. And so sometimes it's just like eat carbs, eat sugar. And that's how it tells you. So eat a lot of fatty meat every day, eat until you're full every time, eat until it stops tasting good. And then if you ever get, the inclination to eat carbs, just, eat a lot of fatty meat until that goes away. And it typically does. And usually after 2 weeks, you don't miss it. And as long as you're eating enough, you won't have any problems with that. So, just remember, light at the end of the tunnel. You'll get there. It's only 2 weeks. It's not that far. You'll do fine. Patrick Lee, thank you very much for the super chat. Hi, Dr. Chaffee. If we are true carnivores, why does the taste of raw meat repulse many of us? Common vegan argument. I think that's assuming a fact that's not in evidence because raw meat does not repulse most of us. We have every cuisine and every culture has some sort of raw meat dish like sashimi, sushi, steak tartare, steak carpaccio in Italy, different sorts of dried meats. Those are raw. Taste great. Who doesn't like beef jerky? Like, get out of here. And those sorts of things. So, and what about all the people that like their meat cooked rare or medium rare? That's what raw meat tastes like, by the way. It's just rare. Rare is raw, and it's delicious actually. So you sear the outside, inside's raw. Seared ahi sashimi. The raw meat tastes fantastic actually, and even herbivores eat raw meat when they have it available. Opportunistically. So like horses, I've seen horses. I have a video of this on my saved stories. on like Carnivores or something like that. And like the first one on there is like a horse eating a baby chicken, which is pretty jarring, to watch that. And the mom chicken gets pissed off and flaps in its face, but just crunched up this little baby chicken. Just okay, just chew that up. I've seen elk eat rabbits, right? That was weird because they don't have the right teeth, so it's just like chewing incessantly at it, and there's just these dead legs just flopping underneath their mouth. It's a bit upsetting. And like even the other elk that were there, it was the video of it. Even the other elk were upset watching it. There's like the bull elk was looking at it, like staring at the cow elk eat this thing and just chewing it up, and it is just like, what the hell are you doing, Martha? And but she was just munching away and just really enjoying it. And I've seen them eat. My sister tells me all the time, there are a lot of elk by their house in Washington State, and they eat little ducklings and other little animals all the time. She was just like, yeah, that was weird. Never knew that. So pretty much everything likes raw meat, and we're no exception. People get used to cooking meat and all these sorts of things, and we're told since birth that raw meat will have an infection and it'll have bacteria, and you'll get food poisoning, you'll get parasites and all that sort of stuff. So people are like, oh no, raw, I don't want that. That's psychosomatic. I typically eat very raw meat. I sear the outside and leave the inside raw. Elle does not like that. And so, we cook different steaks, but it's that's how my tastes run. And I've absolutely eaten raw steak. Absolutely. Where I get home and I'm just like, really want something, and I'm like waiting for the pan to heat up. I'm like, no, screw this. And I just eating half the steak raw out of the fridge while I'm waiting for the pan to heat up, and I cook the rest and take my time with that and enjoy it a bit more. So no, raw meat tastes great. Try it. It's perfectly fine. But in fact, raw fish tastes way better than cooked fish. I mean, think about the difference between seared ahi or ahi tuna or sashimi and a can of tuna. It's the same animal, right? It's tuna, and one tastes amazing, is delicate and flavorful, and the other is like chewing on cardboard. It's disgusting. And you have to mix it up with like butter or some sort of fat just to get it some sort of flavor that's palatable. And so yeah, no, it's totally bad argument. I mean, they may not like the idea of eating raw meat. That doesn't actually mean it tastes objectively bad. It tastes objectively amazing, and a lot of people eat raw meat, so they're dumb. But yeah, I mean, look at the Inuit. They eat raw meat all the time, and then Annette and all these sorts of people. A whole bunch of cultures do this. Like we already said, there's already a ton of different sorts of dishes in every culture that they incorporate raw meat. So, lox, what do you think smoked salmon is? That's raw, So, yeah, no, so that's easily debunked. So Ripe Cantaloupe, thank you very much for the super chat. Looks like the question is down here. And they say, my question is, I'm only eating once a day because I'm not hungry otherwise. Is that okay? Also, I've been experiencing indigestion-like symptoms with burping. Is this normal? I've been lying for 2 weeks. So eating once a day is definitely fine. Do remember that your hunger signals do change, and they're much more subtle. And so maybe you are hungry, you're just not realizing it. So eat fatty meat until it stops tasting good. If once a day is fine, then that's fine. If you're feeling a bit off or a bit weird or don't really know what's going on there, or you're getting carb cravings, or like something else besides meat is looking good, or a steak sounds really good, ask yourself, am I hungry right now? Try eating meat. And if it tastes good, then you're hungry. Keep eating until it stops tasting good, and just go on like that. Getting a bit of indigestion. Sometimes you can get some, again, that psychosomatic sort of upset stomach because you're eating something that you're not used to, and you're doing it in a way that your body's not used to. And so you just need to ease into that. The burping side of things, I've seen that a couple times. I don't really know why that is. It typically goes away. Just see how you go. And hopefully everything just sort of settles down and doesn't cause a problem. But you've been doing this for 2 weeks, which is great. You're just about to get into like the really exciting time where your body starts working so much better, and you start shredding fat, stacking on muscle. Especially if you're working out, and you just start feeling better and better and better and better and better. Some people are a bit more slow burn on their weight loss, or fat loss, I should say. But typically people lose a lot of weight even early on, and they just feel a lot better anyway. Some people who, because one reason their leptin is very elevated, their fasting insulin is very elevated, all of this means their metabolism is very depressed. It may take a little longer. Some people snap right back and their bodies recover and they lose a lot of weight really quickly, and others it takes longer. So either way, just keep going with it. You're just about to get in that time where you're just starting to feel better and better and better and better and better. So I'm really excited for you, because that's a very exciting time. I remember that time. That was my favorite time, because I just felt so good, and it was just really exciting to see how much better I could get as I went. But yeah, if you only need to eat once a week, then you only need to eat, or once a day, then you only need to eat once a day. Just listen to your body, eat more often if it's telling you to, and try to relearn your hunger signals, because they can be very subtle, and it's very easy to undereat on a carnivore diet. So at least try to eat once a day. If that first bite tastes like cardboard, fine. You don't need to eat that day, but at least try once a day, and you'll be fine. 2-3 times a day are perfectly fine too, if that's what your body is telling you to do. Good luck. Gunther SB, thank you very much for the super chat. I love your plants are trying to kill you message. In an old book, I read that a few fermented vegetables have probiotics. Do those also have toxins, and is it best to avoid them? They do have toxins. The fermentation process does lower the toxic load and increase the bioavailability of the nutrients, so that's better. It's still optimal to avoid them, though, I would say. If you're trying to get them for that probiotic purpose, fine. But remember that when you establish a microbiome that's healthy, you will perpetuate it with the meat that you're eating. And so you don't need to continue doing that. There are also probiotics in live culture fermented dairy. So you can have fermented dairy as opposed to fermented vegetables. That's what I would personally do. That's what I've personally done. I don't use ferments at all to any great extent, not plants anyway. I do have occasional yogurt, but I do it in the same way that my friend Dr. Sean O'Mara would recommend with other fermented vegetable probiotics, which is a little tiny bit put on meat, chewed up together in the same bite. So you're mixing that stuff into the meat so that you swallow that down, and the bacteria survive your stomach acid, which is, if you're just eating it straight, probably won't happen. And so when you do that, you can get that bacteria past the guard of your stomach acid and get that into your lower intestine where it's supposed to be. And but once you have it established there, it's established, and you don't need to keep, planting crops. They just keep going. They keep their plants to just keep growing and growing and growing. So they're not like the wheat that just like grows and dies and grows and dies, and you have to keep replanting them. These will perpetuate themselves if you're just eating properly. So, and a lot of people don't use probiotics, and they have excellent microbiomes. So, but the fermentation process does lower the toxic load, yes. And those probiotics are fine, if you need it. So if you had antibiotics or something like that, yeah, maybe have some of those things. I wouldn't take probiotics from the store, because those have been shown to be pretty useless. And so, if either do it with fermented vegetables, but I would really stick to fermented dairy. That's what I stick with. And not that I've had to take antibiotics in a very long time, but that's something that people typically do, is have a bit of yogurt for a week or two after they take antibiotics, and that can just sort of replenish their gut microbiome and be pretty healthy. So that's what I do. But then eventually you're just going to have an established microbiome, and your meat's going to perpetuate that. Just like the Inuit, they just have very healthy microbiomes, and so that just gets perpetuated. Also, your oral biome changes, and so that bacteria is going to get seeded into the meat and then swallowed with each bite. So if you have healthy oral biome, that can give you healthy gut biome. It's just when we're eating a bunch of plants and carbs and things like that, you actually don't have very healthy oral microbes. And so those aren't necessarily seeding the right microbes down to your gut as well. So, those sorts of things, probably a good idea, but not in our case, and certainly not long-term. I don't think you need them. Leah Lowler, thank you very much for the very generous super chat. I appreciate it. Brand new carnivore from Texas with questions. First, your thoughts on fasting to help us lose skin from weight loss. I have heard it's important. I don't necessarily think it's that important. I don't think you necessarily have to fast at all. I haven't seen one way or the other on fasting helping loose skin. People have fasted and their skin has shrunk. There's a famous story in the UK where a guy, I think in Scotland, was very overweight, and he just basically stopped eating for over a year and just drank water and took a multivitamin every day. And he lost all this weight, and he walked to work every day and just lost all this weight, and was very skinny, and the skin came down with him. Now, you can do that. If you lose a lot of weight, your skin will come down, but if you gain it back up, and then you lose it, and you gain it, and you lose it, and you gain it, and you lose it, after about the third, fourth time, the integrity of your skin and elasticity just sort of gives up. And so it just depends on where you are with that. But if you are just eating the proper amount of protein and fat and all these sorts of things, and eating the right things, that should stimulate the skin to come down as well. People are probably talking about like, oh, you need to fast for autophagy, and this is going to break down the cells. That is a really big reach on what autophagy is for and does, and also how it comes about, because you get autophagy just from not eating carbs. When your insulin goes down, autophagy goes on. And so it's insulin that blocks autophagy. And so when you fast, yes, you go through autophagy because your insulin is coming down, not because you're starving yourself and your body's trying to eat things. Your body eats the fat. Your body runs on fat. That's what it runs on when you're fasting or when you're starving. And it's not just going around because it's breaking down the mitochondria and then it's replacing them and increasing their number. So it's not looking around scavenging for materials. It's making new things. It's making new mitochondria. It's making new cells. And so, no, that's not what's happening there. So I don't think you need to fast. If you are going and you're on a carnivore for several months and you're not really getting the results that you want to try fasting for periods of time, go for it. But I don't typically recommend it, and I don't think it's necessary in this case. 2, will carnivore help nail, skin, and hair health? My nails are not in great shape. Yes, absolutely. It absolutely helps all of those. And a lot of people find that it's really, really beneficial, especially with skin and nails and hair. The one caveat to that is that some people find when they go onto any ketogenic diet and you have this metabolic state change, it can actually trigger a fallout phase in your hair. And so you can lose a bit of hair. It's very much more noticeable for women, especially because hair is longer. And so you're squeezing your ponytail. And it's just like, oh, that's not as thick anymore. And you're seeing it in the drain and all these sorts of things. And you're like, it's like a Wookiee took a bath in your tub or something like that. And you're just like, well, this isn't good. And, so it's temporary though. So it triggers a fallout phase. It's not that the hair is dying. It's that it's a fallout phase, and they actually typically grow back, and they typically grow back thicker. And so it's not necessarily you get more hairs, but the hairs that grow back are thicker. And so it looks thicker and fuller as well. And so, that's something that a lot of people experience as well. So just be mindful of that, because some people do experience that. Do make sure that you have all your nutrients, right? So you check your B12 and your folate and your zinc and magnesium and D and thyroid. Thyroid is when people have thyroid dysfunction, that's a very common cause of having hair sort of fall out and not be supported. You need thyroid for every single cell in your body, and you need your thyroid hormone for every cell in your body. And so I would, just check those things. If people are experiencing hair loss, you just check your bloods, you check your thyroid, you check all those sorts of things. And as long as those things are okay and everything's great, like, okay, it's just a fallout phase. It'll come back. Keep an eye on it, and you'll see, and your hairstylist or your barber will look at it and be like, yeah, there's little hairs growing up, and you have a whole bunch of these things. It takes a while for women to grow back. They do come back. by and large. So, and yes, your hair, skin, and nails get a lot more healthy. Put tallow on your skin. Probably the best thing you'll ever put on your skin is beef tallow, just straight up cooking tallow, unused cooking tallow, just scrape it out of a pan and just put it on your skin. Your skin will never look better or be healthier than if you use tallow on your skin. Good luck. Rob, thank you for the super chat. Looks like there's no question attached, maybe down below. Leah has a follow-up question though. So thank you, Leah. Follow-up question: why is ruminant meat better than meat like fowl or poultry? Any meat that's wild, that's eating its natural diets, great. But most animals that we buy from the store are not, and they're not being fed their natural diet. And so ruminant meat have a complex 4-barrel chambered stomach, and so they are going to ferment this food before they digest it and absorb it, right? So, or as part of their digestion, they're going to ferment it, so they're going to ferment it before they absorb it. Fowl, poultry, pigs, fish, they're monogastrics like us. They only have one stomach. They don't ferment it before they absorb it. And so if they're being fed a bunch of plants that have plant toxins that they're not actually designed to eat, they're not going to be able to detoxify those things as well. And so it has to go into their body first, and then their liver tries to detoxify the stuff. But the stuff gets stored in the fat, especially like in the like linoleic acid, much higher linoleic acid levels, and they can just build up. It's not going to be as bad as eating the plant. It is filtering out a lot of this garbage and getting out a lot of the nutrients, but some of that stuff builds up. And so that's the main reason why. So it's more nutrient dense. It's also has less of a toxic load. And typically, even when a ruminant animal is eating grains and other garbage that it's not supposed to eat either, it's going to bring less of those toxins in. It's not necessarily going to be as nutritious because it's not going to have all the nutrients that it needs, which is from grass, but it's going to be a lot better than the other ones. And so it just depends on what your access is to it. But, a lot of people that don't need to worry about that. It's typically for people with autoimmunity. They have to be careful about non-ruminant meat. I feel the best on ruminant meat, beef in particular. That's just how I feel the best. But eat whatever meat that tastes good to you, eggs, all that sort of stuff. Pasture raised is always going to be better. Regeneratively raised, eating its natural diet is always going to be better for you and the animal. And so, we vote with our pocketbook. And if you don't like how animals are being treated in production farms, then don't buy them. Don't support that sort of practice. And it's better for you anyway. It's more nutritious. However, not everyone can afford to make those to make that differentiation. And so don't break the bank on this. Just eat the meat that you enjoy, that makes you feel good, and that you have access to and can afford. And but that's why ruminant meat is typically better. I feel best on it anyway. And I think Elle was talking about the horses and elk eating ducklings, and no, not the ducklings. Yeah, I know. It was very sad. His sister wasn't happy about it. But that happens. So animals eat other animals. Animals eat other things. All animals are heterotrophs, and so they have to eat something else. Something else has to die for them to live. And carnivores as well as herbivores. And herbivores, while they can turn plant tissue into animal tissue and to turn it into fat and protein by way of their microbiome, they will still go after the easy solution of a little duckling or meat or something like that. And because it's much more bioavailable, and that's what they're going for. They're going for, yep, that's what I want. I need meat. I'm going to make meat. In fact, there were some cows that is sort of a creepy story and pretty sad, because these cows were sort of kept in a pen and ran out of food and forage, and they were just basically abused. And so they were sort of locked in, maybe whatever. I don't know if it was a sort of a barn enclosure or if it was out in a paddock, and they just didn't have nearly enough grass and didn't get fed hay or anything like that. But either way, they started dying, and some of the cows started dying. And I read this story about, and they were very subtle about it, but they said that that the cows that started dying off, and then the only way for the other cows to survive was to turn to animal source nutrition. And so they started eating animal source nutrition in order to survive, and then they were eventually rescued. And but as a result, they had a taste for meat. And so, I mean, what animal source food is there, right? It's the dead cow that died next to them, and there's, I don't know how their teeth got through the skin or whatever. Maybe they had to rot a bit first before they could sort of tear it apart. But basically, they were eating the other cows that had died. Sort of like that story of Alive, where people crashed in the Andes and had to eat each other. The people that died in the plane crash to survive for the next 9 months until they were rescued. And so the cows did that. And not only did they do that and survive and do just fine, they put bone meal and then blood and things like that into the feed for cows, actually, from the processed broken down cows. They use every single scrap of every animal that's processed. People are like, oh, well, indigenous populations, they would use these things. They use every piece of it. Now we just waste it. We don't actually. That's money. And so that gets used in fertilizer, that gets used in feed. And so, cows typically eat, get fed, meat and things like that in their feed when they're in sort of the feedlot. Because grain's not very nutritious. It just makes you fat. And that's why they feed it to animals. And that's why they feed it to us. And also because it's very profitable. And so, same thing that happens to the cow is going to happen to us. They're going to make the cow fat. It's going to make you fat. Like, just use your brain. And so these cows, and now they had a taste for meat now, they wouldn't eat feed. They wouldn't do it. And so they got rescued and they got taken out to another farm, and they would not eat grass. They wouldn't eat hay. They were like, no, I want beef. No, that's the good stuff. That's what we want. And so I had to start feeding it. They had to keep feeding them, animal nutrition. Don't know what the hell they were feeding them. But I don't know if they were giving them sort of like, raw, like, dog food, cat food, those sort of raw meat foods. But it's interesting anyway. And, yeah, so that was interesting. I don't know what the hell they fed the cows after that. Probably pretty expensive to feed a 800-pound cow or 1,000-pound cow meat all the time. That's a lot of meat to feed something. But that's a normal thing. Everything eats meat. Meat is not bad for anything. Now, I can't think of a single animal on earth that does not do well eating meat. Not even herbivores. And I would if anyone knows of any, please let us know. But unless, barring eating like a poison sac or an organ that's like chock full of vitamin A or something like that, but the actual meat from another animal, like, is that bad for any other animal? I can't think of a single one. 70% of animal species are carnivores, and even herbivores opportunistically eat meat when they can. And others are omnivorous, so they're eating meat and they're eating plants. Meat is not bad for anything because it doesn't need to be. Plants are bad for nearly everything because they have to be. So that's the difference. And so when people keep telling you that meat's bad for you, just tell them to shut up. I mean, it's just don't even engage. Be like, look, this nonsense. It's a tired ass argument. It's clearly untrue. Moving on. Okay, so Rob found this from Rob. So Rob's question, thank you again, Rob, for the super chat. Rob says, on carnivore for 2 years, just diagnosed with atrial fibrillation and on Cardizam and Eliquis. Can I continue carnivore? 100% you can continue carnivore. You can continue carnivore at really for any medical issue. In fact, they help most medical issues. So no, you don't have to stop this. In fact, once you have something, that you're treating, you're dealing with, it just helps you be healthier and in general. And that's obviously what you want when you are dealing with any sort of health issue. So atrial fibrillation is just, an irregularity of the heart, and you go on medications to try to keep that more regular. And the Eliquis is to stop you from clotting, because you can build up blood clots in the heart, and that can send off and get massive strokes and things like that. And so that's really dangerous. So, continue taking everything, as per your doctor for the AFib. And yeah, absolutely. You can definitely keep doing a carnivore diet. and and see how you go, and hopefully this is something that doesn't bother you. And there are more definitive treatments. There are ablations. There's an atrial appendage, sort of like the size of your tip of your thumb, and that's where this clot generally builds up. And so sometimes they'll ablate that, and they'll just shut that off, and so you don't have anywhere for that to go. So even with atrial fibrillation, you're not going to build up the clots like other people would with that atrial appendage sitting there. And then quite often people are doing ablations and things like that, and they don't have atrial fibrillation anymore. So I know a lot of people that do that. It's very common, and then they can sometimes come off their medications because of that. But it's a procedure. Things go wrong. It is life-threatening. It's very uncommon that happens, but it's in the literature. It's, I think, a few years ago, 6 years ago, when I was looking at it, it was like less than 2%. And obviously that's user dependent. And so you can have some people that have done 1,000, 2,000, 5,000 of these procedures, and they haven't had any fatal complications, or one or two. Obviously their ratios are a lot better. Those are the people that you go to. Or if the medications are just doing their thing, don't worry about it. But yes, you 100% can keep doing carnivore. Then One Passive, Marty DeGarmo, thank you very much for the super sticker. That's very kind of you. There's some more super stickers down here as well. And so Eve, thank you very much for the super sticker as well. Thank you for watching. I appreciate it. Jimena Espinoza, thank you for the very, very generous super chat. Thank you so much for that, or super sticker. That's very, very kind of you. Thank you very much. I appreciate you coming on. And Carnivore Clarity, great to see you. And thank you very much for the super sticker. There was another sort of question or two. We're sort of done on the super chats. Probably good timing because I have to go soon. But there was one question that sort of popped up here that is probably worth addressing, and it's from Becca FX, which is there a way for someone on hemodialysis to get into ketosis on carnivore? Can carnivore actually help in this case? Does anyone know? Thanks. Yes, you can absolutely do carnivore or keto on hemodialysis. Probably even better too, because this is something that can support your renal health, and you're getting rid of all these plant toxins such as oxalates, but there are many others that directly damage the kidney, and so you're getting those away. And in fact, studies have shown that higher protein diet actually improve kidney function. So you hear people like I mentioned, zero carb health and zeroing in on health earlier in the episode. You go there, you look up dialysis, go on their search chat. It goes back 15 years, 20 years, some of this stuff, and or so. And I don't know exactly how long they've been going on, but a long time. They've been going on a long time. And you look at some of these things, and you look up dialysis or kidney failure, all these sorts of things, you will see tons of people who improve. Kidney failure, absolutely. I mean, I've seen people with CKD4 and 5 completely reverse it and just get back to more or less normal kidney function within a matter of months by going on strict meat and water, especially red meat and water. And even some people not as strict. I had one friend of mine who was CKD5. He was nearing having to go on dialysis, and he was 35. And he's just like, I'm not going to see my daughter graduate high school, And so he went on that, but he still had some avocados and meat, which I probably wouldn't have done the avocados because they're high in oxalates. And when you pick them green, which every avocado you buy from the store is going to be picked green and then ripened in the store or at your house. It's usually like a block of wood by the time you get them at the store still. And so they're even more, they have 4 times the number of oxalates when they're picked green, even if they ripen after that. So, even then he got up to, he completely reversed it. And so, it's very, very common that people have improve their kidney function, like just all the time. If you drink enough water, especially, people with normal kidney function will just improve their kidney function, especially when they're going on a carnivore diet. You can definitely do that on dialysis. Will it make them come off dialysis? Unlikely. This is not many things have ever done that. In fact, nothing has really ever done that. I've seen 3. And there's one that's a work in progress. I don't work with people on dialysis all the time, but of the people I've spoken to, I've seen a couple of them on that Zero Carb Health and Zeroing In on Health Facebook group. So look at that. Maybe that's been updated. Maybe there's been more since then. There was one lady who, the first one I saw was on there, and I've seen people since then that I've spoken to. And this lady in particular, she said she did it for 9 months, and her doctor's like, "You're going to kill yourself. You're going to kill yourself." But she's just like, my kidneys already don't work. I'm already on dialysis. Like, they're not going to get more dysfunctional than this. I already need a transplant. But she was just like, nope, this is the right thing for me. I'm going to do it. And after 9 months, she came off dialysis. That does not happen any other way. That has never happened any other way that I know of. And there's a young man I'm friends with now, and he's on dialysis. Unfortunately, he was vegan for a long time. It just destroyed his body, destroyed his neurology. He was one of these guys, probably his B12 was so low that that he got neurological dysfunction. And that's the thing. A lot of vegans say, "Oh, my B12 is fine." Like, I bet you it's not, because the reference range is lowered down because so many people are deficient, and anything under 400 or 540 in America can cause nerve damage. And so these people are like, "Oh yeah, the range is 130 to 540 in the UK, or 600 here, and 700 in some places, 750 in one place I saw here, but they go down to 130, right? That's not normal. And so you're in that, you're like, "Oh yeah, I'm normal. It's fine." No, it's not. Like, you are getting nerve damage, you're getting brain damage from this stuff. So unfortunately, this young man was in that category and destroyed his kidneys. Vegan diet destroyed his kidneys, destroyed his neurological structure. In fact, he couldn't get out of bed. He stopped being able to use his phone. He was so neurologically impaired. And that's when he realized, my diet's killing me. And unfortunately, he's still on dialysis, but he's making more urine. So he's not completely, he does still make urine. It's just a little bit, but now he's making more and more and more. And he's actually getting better, because they test you every time before you get dialysis and before you do all these sorts of things. And so he actually is improving. Is it going to be enough? Is he going to be able to get off dialysis and avoid a kidney transplant? I don't know. He's going to give it a year. Hopefully he does. Is it going to get other people improvements? It's going to improve, but is it going to come back to the point that you're going to be able to get off dialysis? I don't know, but it's definitely worth a shot to look at that. So good luck with that. There's a comment from my sister Rosalind. She said, "Our great grandfather ate his steak so rare his anesthesiologist accused him of being a cannibal when they were at dinner together, and it did not end well for the anesthesiologist." That's true. So the pranks, probably a family trait. But going back to the question that people had with well, why doesn't raw meat taste good? Like, it does taste good. People commonly eat raw, rare meat, and it's delicious. And so, but also we've been cooking meat for 800,000 years, at least 1.5 million years, more likely, and possibly even more than that, over 2 million years. So we've been cooking meat for a very, very long time. We don't need to enjoy the taste of raw meat because we weren't eating raw meat in the wild for the last 1.5 million years or more. Since Homo sapiens have walked this earth, we have been cooking meat, right? Since we've been breathing air and drinking water, we've been cooking meat. And so we don't have to enjoy the taste of raw meat, and yet we do. So, the vegans are not winning any points with that one. But yeah, so our great grandfather, he was a surgeon, and he was actually a very interesting guy. He was the youngest ever graduate from Columbia Medical School ever to date. He was it was a 6-year program at the time, and he started at 16. So he started early and he finished early. So he finished a 6-year program in 4 years, starting at 16. So he was only 20 years old. And New York state law at the time was you wouldn't able to start your residency until you're 21. And there goes the idea that everyone died in their 30s because you couldn't even start your residency until you're 21. And people had professions and degrees that took a lot longer than that. So you get your PhD at 30 and then you die 2 years later. It's like kind of a waste of time at that point, wasn't it? So, just tell those people they're idiots. But so he was on the very beginnings of modern surgery, because he was the second class at Columbia Medical School ever taught sterile practice, that you should wash your hands, right? Before you do surgery. That was not a thing. People didn't realize that. And so infections were rampant in surgeries. And it wasn't ethical to open the abdomen or open the thorax, or open the abdomen or open the thorax. You're chopping off limbs doing this, but there were other things that you did. And so this was on the ground floor of being able to actually do anything, because anesthesia was invented in the 1880s, like mid 18, I think it's like 1885 or something like that, mid to late 1880s. And that's right after he went to medical school. So he graduated sort of, when was that? That would have been in the early 1890s that he graduated. Like, I have his diploma from Columbia and his New York medical license. He's also the 13th medical license the state of California ever gave out, lucky number 13. And and I have his diploma of finishing his residency in surgery at Bellevue Hospital in New York. And that was the early 1890s. So he was right at the beginning of that. So, he was like, they were inventing, seeing what you could do, because it was the first time you could put someone to sleep and open the abdomen safely and not get horrible infections. So very, very interesting. So he's doing a lot of surgeries. He would they didn't have Stryker or Medtronics or anything like that in these places that would make a whole bunch of utensils for us to use as surgeons and just repeat other people's surgeries. He had to invent his own tools, and I still have some of these things. So he would design his own things. He had a forge at his house. Like, his dad was a badass. That's a whole other thing. That's probably too long of a story to get into, but his dad was just a stone cold badass, and taught him and his brothers how to be badasses too. And so he would work a forge. He could work metal, and he's an Ivy League surgeon, and he's out in the forge, doing work like a man. And he would make his own tools. And I still have some of these things that he made for different surgeries. He would think of what he could do, and then it was like, okay, I'm going to make this tool for that. And then he would make it, and he'd bring it in and use it. Pretty badass. So he was with his anesthesiologist one day, and they were at dinner, and it was this very raw steak. He's like, oh, that's just bleeding. You're like a cannibal. It's just disgusting. And he was just like, all right. And my great grandfather was like, he did not accept slights of manner. Like, that was unacceptable to him. And so he's just like, all right. And so he's like, but the guy was marked. And so he what he did was he basically set him up. And so he started back then, every because they didn't have cautery, they didn't have the electrocautery that we use now. You make the skin incision with a scalpel, but then the rest of it, you're doing dissections with cautery. So it cauterizes and burns the little vessels, and you need bipolar and things like that to burn these vessels and separate them and things like that. There's bleeding. It's much less. And so before, you'd have to slowly dissect down, tie off arteries and veins and things like that. You just be tying these things off, all the way down. And it was a lot of blood. So people would lose a lot of blood, and you always have to give transfusions, And so they would have a refrigerator full of blood, and it was just like these little glass canisters that they would sort of hang up and stick in, and they just give blood. And that was a very typical way of doing things, because you just had to, and you didn't call down to the blood bank and get things, cross-matched and this and that. You had blood there, you got it, you brought it over, because you needed a lot of it for most surgeries. And so he started using different sorts of things, getting tomato juice and Worcestershire sauce and this and that. And he started mixing this stuff, and red wine, I think, was the base, and making it, a bit thicker and this and the other. And he would play around with this until he got it, the appearance and texture and consistency and viscosity of blood. And so, but it was all, household items, right? And so he finally did this, and he got one of these things, and put it in one of these blood bottles, and he put it in there, and he just said, and he's pointed to us and said to the nurses, "Don't touch this one. Just leave that one alone. That one's for Dr. Power, right? That's for me. Don't touch it." And so, after that, they would operate in the morning. They didn't have like big electric lights and things like that. I mean, this is the late 1800s, early 1900s, right? So they would operate on the top floor of a hospital, and they'd have these big open skylights so that just this natural light would come in. So they had to start first thing in the morning. That's why surgery starts first bloody thing in the morning, is taken over from that. And so it's with dawn. You had to be there ready to go when that sun came up so you could actually see properly. And then you were dawn to dusk. That's when you were operating. And so so he was just at the end of it. He was just like, he was there talking to anesthesiologist. Man, I am parched. I'm just wasted. I really need to pick me up. And he walked over to this cabinet with it to the blood thing, and he pulled out his blood canister. He just popped it open, and he just like drank it, and he just drank the whole thing down. And anesthesiologist saw that and just blacked out, just fainted and passed out on the floor. Learn not to mess with my great grandfather. So that was pretty funny. So that's the story they're talking about. And yeah, people do just fine with raw meat. The Maasai drink raw blood. They do cook the meat too, but they also can eat it raw. It's not uncommon that people do that. So okay, so that's that. I need to get to work and see patients. But thank you all very much for coming on. Thank you everyone for the super chats and the super stickers. It's very, very kind of you and generous, and a lot of good questions today. And people, be nice to my sister and my Eloise, and especially my mods. They're doing a really good job and keeping everything working well, and people keep being polite. That's the whole thing. If you're polite, there's no problem. If you're going to be rude to people, then you're going to be put in time out. I mean, that's all there is to it. So this is everyone to be cordial and polite society with adults. And so if you're not acting that way, then you're going to be put in time out. And that's all there is to it. And you keep doing it, you're going to be asked to leave. In fact, you're going to be made to leave. And I don't want to do that, because I want everyone to be welcome and to get a lot out of this. But you can't be rude to people. It's not acceptable. And we can't necessarily control that in other parts of our lives, but we actually do have control over this. And so that's what we're going to do. And so just be kind to each other, be polite, and thank you all very much. And I will see you next time.